My daughter uninvited me from her wedding and told me to watch online. But what happened next? Richard Mitchell never imagined he would one day be sitting alone in his living room, watching his own daughter's wedding through a computer screen. At 45 years old, with an unkempt beard and eyes red from crying, he rested his head on his left hand while his right held the mouse with trembling fingers. The ceremony had already started 15 minutes earlier, when he finally managed to access the link Emily had sent him 3 days prior. Just a link. No words of affection, no further explanation, just the virtual address where he could watch the most important moment of his only daughter's life. On the laptop screen, the church was beautifully decorated with white flowers and pink rose arrangements. The guests filled the pews in elegant attire, all smiling and celebrating. Richard recognized many familiar faces, uncles, cousins, family, friends he himself had introduced to Emily over the years. Everyone was there. Everyone except him. Emily appeared at the church aisle wearing a stunning white dress, her veil cascading delicately over her shoulders. She was radiant, more beautiful than Richard had ever seen her. Beside her, walking in the place that should have been his, was Nathan, Emily's younger brother. Richard's chest tightened as he watched Nathan offer his arm to his sister with a smile that tried to mask his own sadness. The 22-year-old knew that moment should have belonged to their father, but there he was, taking on a responsibility that should never have been necessary. The live stream was decent quality, but every now and then the image froze or blurred. Richard kept adjusting the volume, as if that could somehow bring him physically closer to that sacred place where his daughter was getting married without him. When the priest asked who gave the bride away, Nathan answered with a choked voice, "I do, in the name of our family." Richard closed his eyes for a moment. Those words felt like a knife to his heart. Our family no longer included him. Not after everything that had happened over the past 2 years. It all started when Richard, after 20 years working as an accountant at a mid-sized company in Chicago, decided to leave everything behind to start his own firm. Emily, who was finishing her degree in business administration at the time, begged him not to do it. "Dad, you have stability, a good salary. Why risk everything now?" she had argued during a tense family dinner. Richard, however, was convinced it was the right time. He had saved up a good amount of money, had a list of interested clients, and, most of all, was tired of working for others. He wanted to build something of his own, leave a legacy for his children. "Emily, I have experience, I have connections, it'll work out, you'll see," Richard had replied with the confidence of someone who genuinely believed in his dream. But it didn't work out. For the first 6 months, the firm did reasonably well. Richard secured a few clients and remained optimistic. But then problems started piling up. An important client delayed payment for 3 months. Another cancelled the contract, citing dissatisfaction with the service. The firm's bills piled up while revenue plummeted. Richard tried everything. He cut his own expenses, worked 16-hour days, networked at events and associations. Nothing seemed to help. The family's financial situation became critical when he had to dip into their savings to keep the firm afloat. That's when the first major disagreement with Emily happened. She had been dating Michael for 3 years, and they were planning to get married. They had dreamed of a big celebration, which Richard had promised to pay for since she was a teenager. When their financial situation tightened, he had to sit down with his daughter and explain that he couldn't cover the wedding as planned. "What do you mean, Dad? You promised me this my whole life," Emily had shouted, tears of anger in her eyes. "Sweetheart, I know I promised, but things have changed. The firm is going through a rough patch, but it's temporary. We can do something smaller, simpler." "Simpler? Dad, I've dreamed of this wedding since I was a little girl. All my friends had beautiful celebrations, and now you're telling me I have to settle for something simple because you threw away our stability?" The argument had lasted for hours. Emily accused Richard of being irresponsible, of putting the family at risk for an immature dream. Richard tried to explain that he was investing in the family's future, that everything would soon fall into place. But Emily refused to listen. From that night on, the relationship between father and daughter changed completely. Emily began treating Richard coldly, responding only when necessary. During Sunday lunches, she avoided sitting at the same table as him, always making excuses to leave early. The situation worsened when Richard had to sell the family car to pay off some debts. Emily, who used the car to get to work, was furious. "Now, on top of not paying for my wedding, you're leaving me without a car. What kind of father are you?" she said with a tone of disdain Richard would never forget. Catherine, Richard's wife and Emily's mother, tried to mediate between them, but the situation only deteriorated. Emily had landed a good job right after graduating and began covering many of the household expenses, which only deepened her resentment toward her father's choices. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. 6 months after the first argument about the wedding, Richard finally secured some important contracts that promised to stabilize the firm. Excited, he came home with flowers for Catherine and a gift for Emily, a necklace she had mentioned liking months before. "Sweetheart, I landed some new clients. Things will get better now. We can talk about the wedding again," he said, offering the necklace with a hopeful smile. Emily looked at the necklace, then at her father with a hard expression. "Dad, Michael and I have already decided. We're getting married at the courthouse, just with witnesses. We don't want a celebration anymore." "But sweetheart, I told you I got new clients. I can at least help with something." "You don't need to, Dad. You missed your chance," she replied, handing the necklace back. "Michael and I will cover everything. We don't want to rely on promises anymore." Richard felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. He tried to argue, to explain that the business really had turned around, but Emily had already left the room, leaving him alone with Catherine. "Richard, you have to understand her. Emily feels let down. She's dreamed of this wedding since she was little," Catherine said, trying to be diplomatic. But Catherine, I'm getting back on my feet. The new clients are solid. I can pay for her wedding. It's not just about the money, Richard. It's about trust. Emily feels like you put your dreams above the family." In the following months, Richard worked tirelessly to restore their financial stability. The new contracts proved promising, and little by little the family's situation improved. He managed to pay off the debts, buy a new car, and even renovate the house. Yet with every attempt to reconcile with Emily, she only grew more distant. When Richard tried to talk about the wedding, offering financial help, she responded curtly that everything was already taken care of and she didn't need anything from him. Emily's coldness grew stronger when she and Michael decided to change their plans. Instead of a simple civil ceremony, they opted for a big celebration, but this time entirely paid for by them and Michael's family. "Emily, why didn't you tell me? I can help now. The office is doing well." Richard tried to reach out. "Dad, I already said everything's settled. Michael and I don't want help. But I'm your father. I want to be part of your wedding. You've already participated the way you could. When I needed you, you weren't in a position to help. Now everything's arranged." Richard noticed something different in Emily's tone. It wasn't just coldness, there was real hurt there. He tried several times to sit down with her for a serious talk, but Emily always found excuses to avoid it. 3 months before the wedding, Richard discovered he hadn't been invited to the ceremony. He found out by chance when he overheard Catherine talking on the phone with her sister about the preparations. "What do you mean I wasn't invited?" Richard asked Catherine after she hung up. Catherine looked embarrassed. "Richard," Emily said, "you could watch online. She's going to stream the ceremony live." "Watch online? My own daughter is getting married, and I'm supposed to watch online." "She's very hurt, Richard. She thinks you chose work over family." "But Catherine, I did everything for the family. I wanted to build something for us, leave a legacy for the kids." "I know, love. But to Emily, it seemed like you abandoned your responsibilities as a father." Richard tried to talk directly to Emily about the invitation, but she refused to discuss it. When he insisted, she was clear. "Dad, you made your choices. Now I'm making mine. At my wedding, I want people who were there for me when I needed them. Emily, I was always there for you. I just went through a rough patch. No, Dad. You chose an impossible dream over taking care of your family at the most important moment of my life so far. When I needed support and stability, you gave me uncertainty and empty promises." Emily's words echoed in Richard's mind for weeks. He tried to find ways to make amends, to show he'd learned from his mistakes, but every attempt was met with more coldness. 2 weeks before the wedding, Richard made one last desperate attempt. He wrote a long letter, explaining his motivations, apologizing for his mistakes, and begging to be included in the ceremony. Along with the letter, he included a check for a significant amount for the couple's honeymoon. Emily returned the letter unopened and the check torn to pieces. "Dad, it's not about money, it's about being there when it matters. And you weren't." The day before the wedding, Richard had one last conversation with Catherine. "Maybe I should just show up at the church," he suggested, desperate. "Richard, you can't do that. It would be embarrassing for everyone." Emily made it clear she doesn't want you there. "But Catherine, she's my daughter. How can I watch my daughter's wedding online? I know it's hard, but you have to respect her decision. Maybe things will get better after the wedding." Now, sitting in front of the computer, Richard watched his daughter exchange vows with Michael. The groom was a serious young man from a good family who had always treated Richard with respect, even during the tensest moments. Richard liked Michael and knew he'd take good care of Emily. When it came time for the "I do," Richard whispered along with the screen, "I do." The tears he had been holding back finally streamed down his face. There was his daughter, beautiful and happy, beginning a new life, and he was watching online like a stranger. After the vows, the ceremony continued with traditional blessings and prayers. Richard observed every detail, every smile, every emotional tear from the guests. He saw Catherine in the front row, elegant in a blue dress, trying to hide her own sadness at having to experience that moment, divided between her husband and daughter. Nathan, who had walked Emily down the aisle, returned to his seat beside his mother. Richard noticed his youngest son was also emotional. Nathan had always been closer to his father, and Richard suspected he didn't fully agree with his sister's decision. When the religious ceremony ended, the live stream showed the guests heading to the reception hall. Richard hesitated over whether he should keep watching. The reception would be even more painful to watch, with everyone celebrating while he remained alone at home. But he couldn't bring himself to turn off the computer. He wanted to see Emily happy, even if from a distance. He wanted to remember every moment of that day, which should have been special for the whole family. The reception hall was tastefully decorated. Richard recognized Emily's refined style and imagined how much time she had spent planning every detail. The tables were covered with white linens and centerpieces of fresh flowers. The lighting was soft and romantic. During dinner, Richard watched the lively conversations among the guests. He saw relatives he hadn't seen in years, family friends, Emily and Michael's co-workers. Everyone seemed to be genuinely enjoying themselves. Then Richard noticed something that made him even sadder. There was an empty seat at the main table where the father of the bride traditionally would have sat. The place was there, but no one occupied it. It was as if Emily had kept the spot, perhaps unconsciously, but didn't have the courage to invite him to fill it. The newlyweds' first dance was emotional. Emily and Michael danced to a romantic song while the guests watched, enchanted. Richard remembered when Emily was little and would stand on his feet to dance with him in their living room. She always said that when she grew up, she would dance with her dad at her wedding. That memory was particularly painful. Richard had to pause the live stream for a few minutes to collect himself. When he resumed watching, it was time for the father-daughter dance. Richard watched anxiously, wondering how Emily would handle the situation. To his surprise, she called Nathan onto the dance floor. Her younger brother, visibly uncomfortable, accepted the invitation and danced with her to a gentle song. During the dance, Richard saw Nathan whisper something in Emily's ear. She shook her head, and he insisted. There seemed to be a serious conversation happening there, disguised as a sweet moment between siblings. Richard desperately wished he could hear what they were saying. He was sure Nathan was trying to convince Emily to call her father, to include him in the celebration somehow. But from the determined look on Emily's face, Richard understood she wouldn't change her mind. After the dance came the traditional speeches. Catherine gave an emotional talk about Emily, recalling childhood moments and wishing happiness for the couple. Michael thanked everyone for coming and made beautiful declarations of his love for Emily. Nathan also spoke, and Richard sensed his son was trying to include him indirectly. Emily has always been a special daughter, loved by all of us in the family. I'm sure she'll be a wonderful wife, just as she's always been an exceptional daughter and sister. The word everyone seemed loaded with meaning, as if Nathan wanted to remind those present that someone important was missing from the celebration. Emily, when it was her turn to speak, thanked everyone for coming, talked about her love for Michael and the dreams they had for the future. At no point did she mention her father or make any reference to his absence. Richard watched the celebration until late into the night. He saw the guests dancing, talking, celebrating. He saw Emily, radiant, savoring every moment of her special day. She was genuinely happy, and that was both a relief and a pain for Richard. Around midnight, as the party was winding down, Richard finally turned off the computer. He sat in the dark living room for a long time, trying to process everything he had seen and felt during those hours. Catherine came home around 2 in the morning. She found Richard still sitting on the couch, staring at the closed laptop. "How was it?" she asked softly. "She looked beautiful," Richard replied, his voice choked. "So happy." "She really was. It was a lovely celebration." "Did she ask about me?" Catherine hesitated before answering. "Richard, you can tell me the truth." "No, honey, she didn't ask." Richard nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "And Nathan?" "Nathan tried to convince her to call you a few times during the party. But you know Emily. Once she makes up her mind, stubborn just like her father." Richard finished with a sad smile. In the days following the wedding, Richard tried to maintain a normal routine, but he was visibly down. At the office, he struggled to concentrate. At home, he was distracted and melancholy. Nathan visited his father a few days after the wedding. The young man was clearly uncomfortable with the family situation. "Dad, I tried talking to Emily at the party. I told her to call you, at least to thank you for watching." "And what did she say?" "That you made your choices and she made hers. That she won't change her mind about this." "Nathan, do you think I did the wrong thing, trying to start my own business?" Nathan thought for a moment. "Dad, I think you had every right to try. But maybe the timing wasn't the best. Emily was going through a lot of stress with the wedding, graduation, and her new job. She needed stability at that moment." "But I never abandoned you guys. I just wanted to build something better for the family." "I know, Dad. But to Emily, it felt like you were prioritizing a personal dream over the family's needs. She felt abandoned." Richard knew Nathan was right. Looking back, he could see how his decisions had affected the family, especially Emily, who was going through an important transition in her life. A week after the wedding, Richard made a decision. He wrote a new letter to Emily, this time fully acknowledging his mistakes and taking complete responsibility for the consequences of his choices. He didn't ask for forgiveness or try to justify himself. He simply admitted that he had failed as a father when she needed him most. The letter read, "Emily, I want you to know that I completely understand your decision not to include me in your wedding. I watched online and you were radiant. Michael is a lucky man to have you as his wife. I've spent these last few days reflecting on everything that's happened over the past 2 years. I realize now that when you needed a present, stable father the most, I offered uncertainty and instability. When you dreamed of your wedding, I turned that dream into a source of anxiety and disappointment. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or to justify my choices. I'm writing to take full responsibility for my failures as a father. You had every right to want to get married knowing you could count on your family's support. I failed to give you that security. I hope you'll be very happy in your marriage. Michael is a good man, and you make a beautiful couple. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here, but I won't insist or pressure you anymore. You deserve to live your life without the weight of my attempts at reconciliation. With love and respect, Dad." Richard left the letter personally at Emily's house, placing it in the mailbox. He didn't ring the doorbell or try to force a meeting. He just left the letter and walked away. Emily read the letter that same day but didn't respond. Catherine found out because Emily called her that night. "Mum, I got a letter from Dad." "What did you think of it?" "I don't know what to think. It's different this time." He didn't try to justify himself. "Emily, your father is really hurting. He knows he messed up. Mom, it's not that I want to hurt him, but I felt so abandoned during that time. When I needed stability the most, he threw everything away for a dream." "I know, sweetheart, but maybe it's time for you two to talk. I'm not ready yet, I need more time." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. 2 months had passed since the wedding. Richard had stopped trying to contact Emily, respecting what he'd written in the letter. He focused on work and tried to rebuild his relationship with Catherine, which had also been strained by all the family stress. The accounting office was doing well, the contracts Richard had secured remained stable, and he'd even landed some new clients. Ironically, the business venture that had caused so much trouble was finally working out. It was on a Tuesday morning when Nathan showed up at his father's office with a worried expression. "Dad, I need to talk to you." "Of course, son, what's wrong?" "It's about Emily and Michael. They're going through some difficulties." Richard immediately tensed. "What kind of difficulties?" "Financial ones. Michael lost his job 3 weeks ago. The company he worked for went under overnight. They can't keep up with the bills for their new apartment." "Did they ask anyone for help?" "No one in the family. Emily's too proud to ask. But I found out because Michael talked to me. He's desperate, looking for work everywhere, but nothing's come up." Richard grew thoughtful. His first instinct was to help immediately, but he knew Emily would refuse any attempt. "Nathan, what do you think I should do? Emily made it clear she doesn't want my help." "Dad, maybe you could talk to Michael directly. He doesn't have anything against you. The fight is just between you and Emily. But that would betray her trust. If she found out Michael came to me." "Michael doesn't know I'm talking to you. I took the initiative myself." "But Dad, they're really in trouble. Michael's even considering a job in another city." The thought of Emily moving away because of financial struggles left Richard distressed. This was exactly the kind of situation a father should be able to help with. "Do you have Michael's number?" "I do, but Dad, you have to be careful. If Emily finds out you talked..." "I know. I'll figure out a way to approach it naturally." That same afternoon, Richard called Michael. The young man was surprised but answered politely. "Hi, Richard, how are you?" "Hi, Michael. I just wanted to check in after the wedding. How's married life treating you?" "Oh, it's all right, still getting used to the new routine." Richard noticed that Michael wasn't going to bring up the issues on his own. He decided to be more direct. "Michael, I know it might not be my place to ask this, but are you doing okay at work? Last time we talked, you were really enjoying the company." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Michael sighed before answering. "To be honest, Richard, the company went under a few weeks ago. I've been job hunting, but it's tough." "Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry to hear that. If you need anything..." "Richard, I appreciate it, but you know how Emily feels about these things. She doesn't want us asking the family for help." "I understand, but Michael, you're my son-in-law now. If there's any way I can help, even if it's just with networking tips or referrals..." Michael was silent for a moment. Richard could tell the young man was truly desperate. "Richard, can I be honest with you?" "Of course. I'm considering accepting a job offer in Denver. The pay is good, but it means Emily and I would have to move." Richard felt his heart tighten. "And does Emily know?" "I haven't told her yet. I'm trying to find something here in Chicago first. But if nothing comes up by the end of the month, Michael, I have a few contacts who might be useful. I can make some calls, see if any opportunities come up." "You'd do that?" "Of course, you're a good man, Michael, and I don't want Emily to have to move because of financial struggles. But what if Emily gets upset when she finds out?" "Leave that to me. I'll take responsibility." In the following days, Richard made several calls to contacts at different companies. He explained he was recommending a competent professional without mentioning it was his son-in-law. He managed to schedule 3 interviews for Michael at different firms. When he called Michael with the information, the young man was emotional. "Richard, I don't know how to thank you." "No need to thank me, just land the job, we'll figure out the rest later." Michael did well in all 3 interviews, but one company showed particular interest in his profile. It was a mid-sized consulting firm that was expanding and needed someone with Michael's exact skill set. While waiting for the interview results, Richard wrestled with whether or not to tell Catherine what he was doing. He decided to keep it quiet for now, to avoid raising expectations or complicating things further with Emily. A week later, Michael called overjoyed. "Richard, I got it. The firm offered me the job. The salary's even better than before." "That's wonderful news, Michael. Congratulations." "Richard, I need to tell Emily you helped me." "Michael, maybe it's best not to mention that just yet. Let Emily enjoy your success first." "But I don't feel right keeping it from her." "I understand, Michael, but you know Emily. If she finds out I helped, she might get upset, and that could ruin the moment." Reluctantly, Michael agreed not to mention Richard's help for now. When Emily heard Michael had landed the job, she was overjoyed. The financial pressure that had been weighing on the young couple had finally lifted. Nathan, who knew the whole situation, visited his father the next day. "Dad, Michael told me he got the job. Congratulations." "Thank you, Nathan. I'm just glad they're okay." "Dad, what you did was really kind. You helped even knowing Emily might get mad if she finds out." "Nathan, I'm their father. It's my job to help when I can, no matter the circumstances." "Are you going to tell Emily?" "No, at least not now. Let them enjoy this good moment first." But Richard had underestimated Michael's curiosity and persistence. The young man had been uncomfortable hiding from Emily how he had really gotten the interviews. 2 weeks after starting the new job, he decided to tell his wife everything. Emily's reaction was exactly what Richard had feared. "What do you mean my father helped you? And you didn't tell me?" "Emily, I wanted to, but he asked me not to say anything. He said you might get upset. And you thought it was okay to hide this from me? We're married, Michael. There shouldn't be secrets between us." "I know, love, but I was desperate and your father just wanted to help." "My father? Michael, you don't understand the situation between him and me. He can't just decide. Let her help after everything that's happened." Michael tried to explain that Richard had acted discreetly and respectfully, without pressuring or making things awkward, but Emily was furious, feeling manipulated. "Michael, he used you to try to get closer to me. That's manipulation." "Emily, I don't think that's what it was. He genuinely wanted to help, and if it weren't for him, I might be working in Denver right now." "In Denver? What are you talking about?" Michael realized he had said too much, but it was too late. He had to explain about the job offer in Denver and how he had seriously considered moving before getting the job in Chicago. Emily was even more upset to learn that Michael had hidden both the possibility of moving and his father's help from her. "Michael, how many more secrets are you keeping from me?" "None, Emily, I swear. I just didn't want to worry you." "Worry? Me? Michael, we're a couple. We should have talked about all of this together." The argument between Emily and Michael dragged on for days. She felt betrayed by both her husband and her father. Michael tried to explain that Richard had acted with the best intentions, but Emily didn't want to hear it. Catherine found out about the situation when Emily called her crying. "Mom, Dad, and Michael were conspiring behind my back." "Emily, oh, your father just wanted to help. He found out Michael was unemployed, and how did he find out? Mom, were you hiding things from me too?" Catherine realized the situation was spiraling out of control. "Sweetheart, come over to the house. Let's talk this through properly." Emily went to her parents' house that same afternoon. It was the first time she had set foot there since before the wedding. Richard was in his office when she arrived, but Catherine asked him to give them space to talk alone first. "Mom, I feel like everyone's been lying to me. Michael, Dad, even you seem to have known things I didn't. Emily, your father didn't tell me he was helping Michael. I only found out when Nathan mentioned that Michael was unemployed." "Nathan knew too? Mom, did everyone know except me?" Catherine explained how Nathan had found out about Michael's unemployment and how he had been worried about the couple's situation. She tried to make Emily understand that everyone had acted out of love and concern, not malice. "Sweetheart, your father is hurting so much because of this distance between you. When he found out Michael was struggling, his first reaction was to want to help. But Mom, he couldn't just decide to help after everything that happened. I made it clear. I didn't want his help." "Emily, you made it clear you didn't want his help for you. But Michael is your husband. Your father has every right to want to help his son-in-law. Not without talking to me first," Catherine sighed. "Sweetheart, would you have let him help if he'd asked for permission?" Emily fell silent because she knew the answer was no. "Mom, it's not about whether he helps or not. It's about respecting my boundaries. I made it clear I wanted distance from him. And are you going to keep that distance forever? Emily, your father made mistakes, but he's acknowledged them. He's not trying to justify himself anymore. He's just trying to be a father from a distance. Mom, I need time. I can't just forget everything that happened. No one's asking you to forget, dear, but maybe it's time to talk to him, to hear what he has to say." Emily hesitated. "Is he home?" "He's in the office. Should I call him?" "I don't know if I'm ready." "Sweetheart, you don't have to decide. Anything today, just talk. No pressure, no demands." After much hesitation, Emily agreed to speak with Richard. Catherine went to call him from the office. Richard appeared in the living room, visibly nervous. He had overheard part of the conversation between mother and daughter and knew Emily had found out about his help for Michael. "Hi, Emily." "Hi, Dad." The silence that followed was awkward. Richard sat in the armchair across from the couch where Emily was, keeping a respectful distance. "Emily, Dad, why did you help Michael without telling me?" Richard sighed. "Because I knew you wouldn't allow it." "Exactly. And doesn't that tell you something?" "It tells me you're still very hurt by me, and you have every right to be." "Dad, it's not just about hurt. It's about respecting boundaries. I made it clear I wanted distance." "I know. And I respected that. I didn't try to reach out, didn't insist on being part of your life. But when I heard Michael was struggling, how did you even know?" Richard hesitated. He didn't want to involve Nathan in the situation. "Does it matter? The point is, when I found out, my first instinct was to help." "Dad, you don't understand. When you do things behind my back, it makes me feel like I'm a child who can't make my own decisions." Richard was surprised by that perspective. "Emily, I never meant to make you feel that way. But that's what happened. Dad, Michael, and I are adults. If we were going through something, it was our responsibility to handle it. But you're both my children now. It's natural for me to want to help when I can." "Dad, you can want to help, but you should talk to me first." Richard nodded. "You're right. I should have spoken to you first. Dad, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm trying to explain why I felt disrespected." "I understand, Emily, and I'm sorry for going behind your back." The tone of the conversation was calmer than Richard had expected. Emily wasn't yelling or showing anger. She seemed genuinely interested in explaining her feelings. "Dad, I need you to understand something. Over the last 2 years, I've had to learn not to depend on you. It was painful, but I managed. Now, I need to know that the decisions about my life are mine. Emily, I never wanted you to stop depending on me. I wanted to build a stronger foundation so I could support you better. I know that was your intention, Dad. But when I needed stability, the most you gave me uncertainty. I had to learn to create my own stability." Richard felt the weight of his daughter's words. He was finally fully understanding the impact of his choices on her life. "Emily, how can I be your father now, respecting your independence, but still being there when you need me?" The question took Emily by surprise. It was the first time Richard had truly shown he understood her perspective. "Dad, I don't know. I'm still processing all of this. Emily, I'd like a second chance, not to go back to how things were, but to build something new, where I respect your independence, but can still be your father. Dad, this will take time. I can't just forget everything that happened. I know. And I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance to show I've learned from my mistakes." Emily fell silent for a long moment, clearly reflecting on her father's words. "Dad, I need to talk to Michael about all this. And I need time to think." "Of course. No pressure. But Dad, if we try to rebuild our relationship, it has to be with complete honesty. No secrets, no behind-the-back actions. I completely agree. And you have to understand that I've changed. I'm not the little girl who dreamed of her daddy paying for her wedding anymore. I'm a grown woman, married, making my own decisions. I understand. And I respect that. Emily stood up to leave. Dad, I'll talk to Michael. We'll think about all this. Emily, before you go, I want you to know that watching your wedding online was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But you looked beautiful and radiant, and I was so proud of you, even from afar. Emily felt her eyes well up. Dad, I need to go. She left the house quickly before her emotions overwhelmed her. In the days that followed, Emily had long conversations with Michael about everything that had happened. Her husband helped her see the situation from Richard's perspective too. Emily, your father could have offered direct financial help, but he chose to assist in a way that preserved our dignity. He got me interviews, he didn't just hand me money. Michael, but he should have talked to me first. He should have, yes. But honey, would you have let him? Emily knew she wouldn't have, and that bothered her. She was starting to realize her own rigidity was also causing problems. Michael, I feel like I'm losing control of the situation. Everyone makes decisions about our lives except me. Emily, no one made decisions about our lives. Your father helped me get interviews. I was the one who decided to accept the job. The company decided to hire me. But you all went behind my back. Emily, it wasn't a conspiracy. It was a father trying to help his son-in-law without causing conflict with his daughter. Michael hugged Emily and continued, Sweetheart, I understand you're hurt by your dad, but he's trying to be present in a respectful way. Maybe it's time to give him a chance. Michael, I'm afraid of being disappointed again, and of disappointing him too. Why would you disappoint him? Because I've changed, Michael. I'm not the obedient daughter who accepts everything her father decides anymore. If we rebuild our relationship, it'll be on my terms. And what's wrong with that? Emily, you've become a strong, independent woman. Any father would be proud of that. Emily reflected on Michael's words for several days. She began to realize she might have been unfair by not giving her father a chance to show he'd learned from his mistakes. 2 weeks after their conversation at her parents' house, Emily called Richard. Dad, it's me. Emily, how are you? I'm good. Dad, I'd like to talk to you. Do you have time to meet for coffee tomorrow? Richard was emotional. Of course. Where do you want to meet? There's a cafe near my work. I can send you the address. Perfect. What time? 6 in the evening after my shift. I'll be there. Richard barely slept that night, anxious about the meeting. He arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early and waited nervously. Emily showed up right at 6. She looked elegant in her work clothes, and Richard noticed how mature and confident she seemed. Hi, Dad. Hi, sweetheart. Thank you for calling. They sat at a corner table, a more private spot. Richard waited for Emily to take the lead in the conversation. Dad, I've spent these last 2 weeks thinking about our last talk, and about everything that happened. And what did you decide? That we both made mistakes. You for not considering the impact of your decisions on the family, and me for being too rigid and not giving you space to make amends, Richard was surprised by the maturity of Emily's reflection. Emily, I take full responsibility for my mistakes. You're not at fault for anything. Dad, I am. I could have talked to you instead of just cutting you out of my life. Sweetheart, you were hurt. It was natural to react that way. It was natural, but it wasn't the best way to solve the problem. Emily took a sip of her coffee before continuing. Dad, I want to try rebuilding our relationship, but I need you to understand that I've changed. I'm not the little girl who depends on her father for everything anymore. Emily, I see that, and I'm proud of the woman you've become. Dad, if we're going to try again, it has to be with clear rules. I need you to respect my autonomy and independence. Of course. What kind of rules do you have in mind? First, total honesty. If you want to help Michael and me in any way, you talk to me first. No going behind my back. I agree. Second, you have to accept that I can say no. If I don't want your help in a situation, you have to respect that. I agree with that too. And third, our new relationship will be built gradually. I can't just go back to being the daughter I was before. Emily, I don't want you to go back to being that daughter. I want to get to know the woman you are now. Richard's words touched Emily deeply. It was the first time she felt her father truly understood her perspective. Dad, I might be harder to deal with now. I question things more. I'm more independent. Emily, a daughter who questions and is independent, is something to be proud of, not a problem. Even if it means I won't always agree with you or take your suggestions. Especially if it means that. Emily, I want a daughter who has her own opinions and can disagree with me when necessary. Emily smiled for the first time during their conversation. Dad, I think we can try. How do you want us to start? Slowly. Maybe Sunday lunches every now and then. Conversations like this one. Getting to know each other again, little by little. Perfect. And Dad, about the help you gave Michael, I appreciate it. Even if I didn't agree with how you did it, I know you meant well. Emily, next time I'll talk to you first. Next time I promise to listen with an open mind. Their time at the cafe lasted almost 2 hours. Father and daughter talked about work, Emily and Michael's plans for the future, and how Richard's office was doing. For the first time in 2 years, the conversation felt natural and relaxed. Emily shared about her job, the challenges of being newly married, and her professional dreams. Richard talked about the lessons he'd learned from running his own office and how the experience had changed him as a person. Dad, do you regret trying to start your own office? No, Emily. I regret the timing and how I handled the situation, but I don't regret trying. Why? Because I learned a lot about myself, and most importantly, I learned what really matters in life. What's that? Family. Professional success only means something if you can share it with the people you love. Emily was moved by her father's answer. Dad, I really missed you these past 2 years. I missed you too, sweetheart. As they said goodbye, Richard asked, Emily, can I hug you? It was the first hug between father and daughter in over 2 years. Both had tears in their eyes. Dad, would you like to come over for lunch next Sunday? I can make that lasagna you love. I'd love that. Michael also wants to talk to you. He feels bad about keeping things from me. Tell him I understand, and that I hold no resentment. From that meeting onward, Richard and Emily began slowly rebuilding their relationship. Sunday lunches became frequent, and little by little their interactions regained their natural ease. Richard strictly followed the rules Emily had set. Whenever he wanted to help in some way, he talked to her first. He accepted it when she said no, and most importantly, he respected her independence. Emily, in turn, became more open to her father's suggestions and advice, not out of obligation, but because she began to value his experience and perspective. Michael was overjoyed by the reconciliation between his father-in-law and his wife. He had always liked Richard and had been saddened by their estrangement. 3 months after their meeting at the cafe, Emily surprised Richard. She organized a special lunch to celebrate the first anniversary of her father's accounting office. Dad, I want you to know I admire your courage for trying to start your own business. Even with all the difficulties it caused, it was a brave decision. Richard was moved. Emily, that means so much to me. Dad, I learned something important from everything that happened between us. What? That forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or accepting everything. It means choosing to build something new from the lessons. Emily, you're right, and I'm grateful you chose to give me this second chance. Dad, it's not a second chance. It's the first chance for a new relationship between two people who have changed and grown. Richard hugged his daughter. I love you, Emily, and I'm so proud of the strong woman you've become. I love you too, Dad, and I'm grateful to have a father who could recognize his mistakes and change. 6 months after their reconciliation, Michael received a promotion at work. This time, when he wanted to celebrate the achievement, Richard was naturally included in the celebration. During the celebratory dinner, Michael made an emotional toast. I want to thank Richard, who helped me through a very difficult time. And most of all, I want to celebrate the united family we have now. Emily held her husband's and father's hands. "Dad, I'm sorry for excluding you from my wedding. If I could go back..." "Emily, no, don't regret it. That was necessary for us to get where we are today. If you hadn't taken that drastic step, maybe I never would have truly understood my mistakes. But Dad, I deprived you of an important moment. Sweetheart, the important thing wasn't being physically present at your wedding. The important thing is being present in your life. And today, I know I am." Catherine, who had been listening to the conversation, chimed in. "Richard is right, Emily. You needed that distance to build a more mature and healthy relationship." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. A year after their reconciliation, Emily shared news that moved Richard deeply. She was pregnant. "Dad, Michael and I want you to be very present in your grandchild's life, but this time, truly present, not just financially. Emily, I promise I'll be the most involved grandfather there is, and more importantly, I'll completely respect how you and Michael choose to raise my grandchild. Dad, we want your advice, your input, your involvement. We just want everything to be discussed openly. That's exactly how it will be." During Emily's pregnancy, Richard was an exemplary father. He attended doctor's appointments when asked, helped set up the nursery, offered suggestions when requested, and respected the couple's decisions even when they differed from what he might have chosen. When the baby was born, a boy named Ryan, Richard was right there in the hospital waiting room. He was one of the first to meet the baby and was moved as he held the child in his arms. "Emily, thank you for including me in this moment. Dad, you're the grandfather. Your place is here. Emily, I promise I'll be the grandfather Ryan deserves, and I'll help you both however you need, always respecting your decisions. Dad, I trust you." 2 weeks after Ryan was born, Richard was visiting his grandchildren when Michael brought up something he'd been thinking about for a while. "Richard, I have a proposal for you." "What proposal?" "The company I work for needs an external accounting consultant. I'd like to recommend your firm." Richard was surprised. "Michael, are you sure? I don't want you to feel obligated." "Richard, I don't feel obligated. I know the quality of your work. Besides, it'd be good to keep business in the family." "Michael, I really appreciate the recommendation, but I want you to know that if it doesn't work out for any reason, it won't affect our personal relationship." "Richard, I know that. Emily and I talked about it. We're keeping professional and personal matters completely separate." Richard's firm did secure the contract with Michael's company, and the work proved very successful. Richard showed total professionalism, treating Michael like any other client during work matters. 3 years after Ryan's birth, the family had found a perfect balance. Richard was a loving and present grandfather, but fully respected the parents' authority. Emily had become a confident mother and a daughter, who valued her relationship with her father. During one of their Sunday family gatherings, Nathan, who was now finishing college, made an interesting observation. "I'm amazed at how much stronger our family became after everything we went through." Emily agreed. "Nathan, I think sometimes things need to break so they can be rebuilt better." Richard added, "And most of all, it takes humility to admit mistakes and courage to change." Catherine, who had witnessed the entire family saga, reflected, "I've learned that true love sometimes means letting people go so they can choose to come back." Michael, holding Ryan in his arms, said, "Ryan will grow up in a family that knows how to resolve conflicts by talking, not by walking away." "Exactly," Emily agreed. "Dad, thank you for teaching me that it's possible to change and grow even when we think it's too late." "Emily, thank you for giving me the chance to show I've changed, and most of all, for teaching me that being a father isn't about control, it's about support." 5 years after the wedding Richard watched online, the family gathered to celebrate Emily and Michael's 5th anniversary. This time Richard was seated at the main table beside his daughter, in the place that should always have been his. During dinner, Emily gave an emotional speech. 5 years ago, when Michael and I got married, our family was going through a very difficult time. I made the painful decision to exclude my father from the ceremony, because I was hurt and disappointed. Richard held his daughter's hand as she continued. Today I understand that decision, as painful as it was necessary. It forced us to confront our problems and build a new, more mature relationship. Dad, thank you for respecting my time and space. Thank you for showing you'd change through actions, not just words. And most of all, thank you for teaching me that true love is the kind that respects people's individuality. Tears welled in Richard's eyes. Emily, thank you for giving me the chance to be a better father. And thank you for teaching me that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to learn and change. Michael raised a glass. I'd like to toast to our family, who managed to turn a crisis into growth and distance, into an even stronger reunion. Nathan added, and I'd like to toast to the example you've set for all of us, that it's possible to forgive without forgetting and rebuild without repeating the same mistakes. Catherine moved, made the final toast. I'd like to toast to the love our family discovered is possible. A love that respects, supports, but also allows each person to be who they truly are. Ryan, now 3 years old, didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could feel the love and harmony of the family gathered around him. He sat on his grandfather Richard's lap, playing with the buttons on his shirt. Richard looked at his grandson and then at the whole family seated at the table. He remembered that painful afternoon 5 years earlier when he had watched Emily's wedding alone in front of the computer. He never imagined that such deep and genuine connection with his daughter could emerge from that pain. You know, Richard said, addressing everyone, I always thought being a good father meant protecting my children from all hardships. Today I understand that being a good father means teaching them how to face hardships. Emily smiled. And being a good daughter doesn't mean never disappointing your parents. It means having the courage to be true to yourself, even when it creates conflict. Exactly, Richard agreed. And most importantly, it means having the courage to forgive and start over when necessary. The evening ended with the whole family gathered in the living room talking, playing with Ryan, and planning their next get-together. It was a scene of harmony that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. When Emily and Michael left that night, Richard stood on the porch, waving until their car disappeared around the corner. Catherine joined him. Richard, are you proud of how things turned out? I am, Catherine, but more than anything, I'm grateful. Grateful that Emily had the courage to confront me, that you stood by me during the hard times, and that Michael was patient with our complicated family. Richard, our family isn't complicated. Our family is real. Real families go through crises, make mistakes, and hurt each other, but they also know how to forgive and rebuild. Catherine, if you could go back, would you change anything? Catherine thought for a moment. No, Richard. I think everything happened the way it needed to. The pain we went through made us stronger and brought us closer. Even the fact that I missed Emily's wedding. Especially that. Richard, if you had been at the wedding without resolving your issues, you both would have just pretended everything was fine. The distance forced you to truly face what was wrong. Richard hugged Catherine. Thank you for standing by me through all of this. Richard, I always knew deep down how much you loved each other. You just needed to learn how to show that love in a more mature way. That night, Richard went to bed with peace in his heart. For the first time in years, he felt complete as a father, not because he had gotten everything he wanted, but because he had learned to respect and love his children for who they truly were. 6 months later, Emily discovered she was pregnant again. This time, when she shared the news with Richard, the conversation was entirely different. Dad, Michael and I are expecting another baby. Emily, what wonderful news. How are you feeling? We're happy, but also a little nervous. Ryan is still so young, and having 2 little ones will be challenging. Emily, you can count on me for whatever you need, whether it's helping with Ryan or supporting you in any way. Dad, I know I can count on you, and that makes me feel so much more at ease. Emily, can I make a suggestion? Of course. If you'd like, Catherine and I can take care of Ryan a few times during the week, so you two can rest and prepare for the baby's arrival. Dad, that would be wonderful. Ryan loves spending time with you. And if you need any financial help with the extra costs of the second baby. Dad, Michael and I are doing fine financially, but thank you for offering. Whenever you need anything, just say the word." The difference in their conversation was striking. Richard offered help, but respected when Emily said it wasn't needed. Emily, in turn, was open to accepting support when necessary. During Emily's second pregnancy, Richard was even more present than he had been the first time. He helped with Ryan, accompanied Emily to appointments when Michael couldn't, and provided all the emotional support she needed. When their second grandchild was born, a little girl named Sophie, Richard was once again in the hospital waiting room. But this time his heart was filled with gratitude and peace, not pain and regret. "Emily, Sophie is beautiful. Congratulations." "Thank you, Dad. Do you want to hold her?" "May I?" "Of course, you're her grandfather." Richard cradled Sophie with the same care he had held Ryan, but this time there was no shadow of sadness or guilt to taint the moment. "Dad, I want you to know something," Emily said. "What?" "If Sophie or Ryan ever struggle with me someday, I hope you'll help them understand that parents sometimes make mistakes, but they always love their children." "Emily, if that day comes, I'll help them see that parents are fallible human beings, but a family's love can overcome any mistake." "Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." That night, Richard went home and straight to his computer. He opened the same folder where he had saved the link to Emily's wedding live stream 3 years earlier. He hadn't opened that file since the wedding day. It had been too painful. But now, with everything resolved and the family reunited, he felt ready to revisit that moment. Richard clicked the saved link and watched the ceremony again. But this time, instead of sadness, he felt gratitude. Gratitude that Emily had the courage to make a difficult decision. Gratitude that the pain had turned into growth. Gratitude for having a daughter strong enough to confront him when necessary. When the live stream reached the part where Nathan walked Emily down the aisle, Richard smiled. Now he understood. Nathan hadn't taken his place. Nathan had simply held it, until Richard became worthy of standing there again. "Thank you, Nathan," Richard whispered to the screen. "Thank you for taking care of our family when I couldn't." Catherine found Richard still watching the stream. "Richard, why are you watching this again?" "Catherine, I wanted to see it with new eyes. No pain, no guilt, just gratitude." "And what do you see now?" "I see a courageous daughter who had the strength to make a hard decision because she knew it was necessary. I see a family that weathered a crisis and came out stronger." "Richard, are you proud of the person you've become after all this?" "Very much, Catherine. I became a better father, a better husband, a better person, and I owe that to Emily's courage for not accepting less than she deserved." "Richard, I think it's time for you to delete that file." Richard considered Catherine's suggestion. "No, Catherine. I'll keep it saved, not as a source of pain, but as a reminder of how mistakes can be turned into lessons." "How so?" "One day, when Ryan and Sophie are grown, maybe I'll tell them this story, so they know it's possible to make serious mistakes and still rebuild relationships, as long as we have the humility to acknowledge our errors and the determination to change." Catherine smiled. "Richard, you've really become a wise grandfather." "Catherine, I've become a man who learned that true love sometimes requires us to go through deep pain to grow." 2 years later, when Ryan was 5 and Sophie was 2, the family organized a special anniversary party for Emily and Michael. 7 years of marriage, and Richard was present as he had never been before. During the party, Ryan approached his grandfather. "Grandpa Richard, why weren't you at Mommy's wedding?" The question caught Richard by surprise. It was the first time Ryan had asked about it. "Ryan, back then, Grandpa and Mommy were going through a tough time. Sometimes people who love each other need to spend some time apart to learn how to love each other better." "But do you love each other now?" "Very much, Ryan. Grandpa loves Mommy very much, and Mommy loves Grandpa very much. And you'll never fight again." Richard laughed. "Ryan, people who love each other sometimes disagree about things, but now Grandpa and Mommy know how to talk through problems instead of getting angry." "Oh, like me and Sophie. Sometimes we fight, but then we make up." "Exactly, Ryan. That's how family love works." That night, after everyone had left, Richard was tidying up when he found Ryan asleep on the couch. The boy had worn himself out during the party and dozed off. Richard picked up his grandson to carry him to the guest room. Ryan opened his sleepy eyes. "Grandpa, I love you. I love you too, Ryan. Grandpa, will you always be here for me?" "Always, Ryan. Grandpa learned that being present is the most important thing there is. And if one day you make a mistake with me like you did with Mommy." Richard was moved by his grandson's innocent yet profound question. "Ryan, if one day Grandpa makes a mistake with you, I'll apologize and do everything to make it right, and you help me be a better grandpa, okay?" "Okay, Grandpa." Richard tucked Ryan into bed and watched him sleep for a few minutes. He thought about how life had taken surprising turns. 5 years earlier, he had missed the chance to be there for his daughter's most important moment. Now, he was present for the simplest yet equally important moments in his grandchildren's lives. When Richard returned to the living room, he found Emily putting away the last dishes from the party. "Sweetheart, leave that. I'll take care of it tomorrow." "Dad, it's almost done. Would you keep me company?" "Of course." As Emily finished organizing the kitchen, father and daughter talked about the party, how much Ryan and Sophie had enjoyed themselves, and the family's plans for the coming weeks. "Dad, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Emily." "Do you ever regret not giving up on starting the office when I asked you to?" Richard thought carefully before answering. "Emily, I regret underestimating how my decisions would affect the family, but I don't regret trying to build something of my own." "Why?" "Because that experience taught me lessons I wouldn't have learned any other way. It taught me about humility, priorities, and what truly matters in life." "And what truly matters?" "Family, Emily. No matter how much professional success I have, if I can't share it with the people I love, it's worth nothing." "Dad, if you had to make the same choice today between family stability and the chance to build something of your own, what would you do?" "Today, I'd talk to the family before making any decision. I'd listen to everyone's concerns and find a way to pursue my dreams without risking your stability." "Dad, this shows how much you've changed." "Emily, you've changed too. Today, you'd be able to support one of my dreams, even if it came with some risks, wouldn't you?" Emily smiled. "I would, Dad, because now I trust that you'd put the family first. And that's exactly the trust I want to keep for the rest of my life." When Emily left that night, Richard stayed alone on the porch, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few years. He thought about the man he was before the crisis with his office, someone who believed being a good father simply meant providing financially for the family. Now he understood that being a good father was far more complex. It was about being emotionally present, respecting his children's individuality, knowing how to listen and admit mistakes, and showing love through consistent actions, not just words. Richard also thought about the strong woman Emily had become. She was no longer the daughter who passively accepted all her father's decisions. She was a woman with her own opinions, capable of standing her ground when needed, but also of forgiving and rebuilding. "Thank you, Emily," Richard said aloud, looking up at the stars. "Thank you for forcing me to become a better father." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the backyard. Richard felt at peace with himself and his family. He knew challenges still lay ahead. After all, life always brings new obstacles. But now he was certain his family was ready to face any difficulty because they had learned to communicate, respect, and support one another. The next day, Sunday, the whole family gathered for their traditional lunch. Ryan and Sophie played in the yard while the adults prepared the meal and caught up. Nathan, who was now working at a tech company, shared some interesting news. "Everyone, my company is offering a sponsored master's program. I'm thinking of applying." Richard immediately showed interest. "Nathan, what field do you want to study?" "Business administration with a focus on technology. It'd be in the evenings, so it wouldn't interfere with work." "Nathan, you have my full support," Richard said. "If you need any financial help with costs the company doesn't cover..." "Dad, thank you, I think I can manage. But it's good to know I can count on you." Emily chimed in. "Nathan, what if you need someone to help with chores so you have more time to study?" "Emily, that'd be great, but you already have so much going on with Ryan and Sophie." Michael offered. "Nathan, I can help with some things on weekends. We can set up a schedule." Richard watched the conversation with pride. His family had learned to support each other naturally and spontaneously. No one was offering help out of obligation. They genuinely wanted Nathan to succeed. "Nathan," Richard said, "have you all noticed how our family has changed? Before, everyone handled their problems alone. Now, we help each other without hesitation." Catherine nodded. Richard's, "Right, that crisis we went through taught us the importance of sticking together," Emily added. "And most of all, it taught us that supporting each other doesn't mean solving problems for one another, but being there through the tough times." Nathan moved, looked around at his gathered family. "You all know I love you, right?" "We love you too, Nathan," Richard said. "And we're so proud of the man you've become." Just then, Ryan came running from the yard. "Grandpa Richard, Sophie fell and she's crying." Richard got up immediately to check on her. He found Sophie sitting on the grass, a small scrape, on her knee, softly crying. "Come here, Sophie. Grandpa will take care of you." Richard picked up his granddaughter and carried her inside, where he cleaned the scrape and put on a colorful bandage. "Does that feel better now?" "Yes, Grandpa." "Thank you. Sophie, whenever you get hurt, you can always call Grandpa, okay?" "Okay, Grandpa. Will you always help me?" "Always, Sophie. Grandpa learned that taking care of the people we love is the most important thing in the world." Emily, who had watched the scene, walked over to Richard. "Dad, you're an amazing grandfather." "Emily, I try to be the grandfather you deserve to have when you were little. Dad, you were a good father when I was a child. The problems only came during that difficult time in my teens and early adulthood." "Emily, I promise I'll be an even better grandfather than I was a father." "Dad, you don't have to prove yourself anymore. You've already shown you've changed." Richard hugged Emily. "Sweetheart, I'm not trying to prove myself. I'm just being the best version of myself I can be." The Sunday lunch stretched into the early afternoon. The family talked about everything: Nathan's plans for his master's degree, Richard's new projects at the office, the challenges Emily and Michael faced with 2 young children, and the mischief Ryan and Sophie got into. It was the kind of natural, relaxed conversation Richard had missed during the years of crisis. There was no tension, no off-limits topics, no lingering resentment. It was a genuinely happy and united family. When everyone had left, Richard and Catherine were alone in the house. They sat on the porch to enjoy the evening. "Richard, are you happy?" "Very happy, Catherine. Happier than I ever imagined possible after everything that happened." "Richard, if you could give advice to parents going through conflicts with their adult children, what would you say?" Richard thought carefully. "I'd tell them to be humble, to recognize that children grow up and become independent people with their own opinions. And sometimes loving them means giving them space to make their own decisions, even when we don't agree. And if the child pulls away, like Emily did, I'd say to respect that distance, not to force a reconciliation, to use that time to reflect on their own mistakes and truly change." "Richard, do you think Emily was too harsh by excluding you from the wedding?" "No, Catherine. Now I understand that was the only way to make me truly grasp the seriousness of my mistakes. If she had included me in the wedding while pretending everything was fine, I never would have really changed." "Would you recommend other children do the same?" "Not necessarily. Every family is different. But I would tell children to have the courage to set clear boundaries when parents aren't respecting their autonomy." "Richard, what was the most important lesson you learned from all this?" "That being a father isn't about controlling your children or making decisions for them. It's about supporting them so they can make their own choices. It's about being there in good times and bad, always respecting their individuality." Catherine nestled into Richard's arm. "Richard, I'm so proud of the man you've become. Catherine, thank you for standing by me during the hardest times. Without your support, I wouldn't have been able to rebuild myself." "Richard, we're family. Families support each other." "Catherine, what's your hope for Ryan and Sophie? That they grow up in a family where they feel loved and respected, that they learn it's possible to disagree with their parents without losing their family's love, and that they know they'll always have a home to return to, no matter what mistakes they might make." "Catherine, they'll have all of that. We've learned the necessary lessons." That night, Richard went to his home office. He sat in the same chair where he had watched Emily's wedding years before. But now, instead of a computer showing a live stream of an event he couldn't attend, There were photos of the reunited family, letters from his grandchildren, and drawings Ryan and Sophie had made for their grandfather. Richard opened a notebook and began to write. He decided to document the entire story of the crisis and reconciliation with Emily, so that in the future he could share these lessons with his grandchildren and perhaps even help other families going through similar situations. He wrote, "Dear Ryan and Sophie, when you read this letter, you'll be adults and perhaps parents yourselves. I want to tell you a story about how our family learned that true love sometimes requires us to go through deep pain in order to grow. A few years ago, Grandpa made serious mistakes as a father. I made decisions thinking I was doing what was best for the family, but in truth, I was putting my own dreams above the needs of you, though at the time that meant your mother, your Uncle Nathan, and your grandmother Catherine. Your mother had the courage to confront me in a way that made me truly understand my mistakes. She uninvited me from her wedding and made me watch online. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life, but it was also necessary. I learned that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to admit mistakes and change. It's about respecting your children's individuality. It's about supporting without controlling. Your mother taught me that children have the right to disagree with their parents, to set boundaries, and to demand respect for their decisions. And she taught me that when these things happen, it doesn't mean love has ended. It means love is transforming into something more mature and healthy. If you ever have conflicts with me, remember this story. Remember that it's possible to disagree with Grandpa and still love me. Remember that you have the right to set boundaries. And remember that even if we need time apart to work through problems, our family's love is strong enough to overcome any crisis. But most of all, remember that Grandpa learned the lessons he needed to. I learned to listen, to respect, and to support without controlling. I hope I never have to go through a crisis like that again, but if it happens, I'll be ready to handle it with more wisdom. With all the love in the world, Grandpa Richard finished the letter and placed it in an envelope, storing it in a special drawer. One day, when Ryan and Sophie were adults, he would share this story with them. In the years that followed, the family continued to grow and strengthen. Nathan completed his master's degree and earned an important promotion at work. Michael also advanced in his career, becoming a manager at the company where he worked. Emily decided to pursue a graduate degree in digital marketing, and Richard fully supported her, even helping with the grandchildren when needed. Ryan started school and proved to be an intelligent, curious child. Sophie grew into a bright and affectionate girl. Both had a very close relationship with their grandparents, especially Richard, who made sure to be present for all the important moments in their lives. 5 years after writing the letter to his grandchildren, Richard was organizing his office when Ryan, now 10 years old, appeared curiously. "Grandpa, what are you keeping in that special drawer?" "Just some important memories, Ryan." "Can I see?" Richard thought for a moment. Ryan was becoming mature enough to understand at least part of the family's story. "Ryan, there's a letter here that I wrote for you and Sophie, but it's for when you're older." "Why?" "Because it tells a story about how our family learned to love each other better. It's a story with some sad parts, but it ends well. Grandpa, did you fight a lot before I was born?" Richard sat Ryan on his lap. "We didn't fight much, Ryan, but we went through a tough time when Grandpa made some mistakes and your mom got hurt." "But did you make up?" "We did, and our family became even stronger after that." "Grandpa, if I ever get mad at you, will we make up too?" "Of course, Ryan. People who love each other always find a way to work things out. And if I grow up and disagree with you about something?" Richard smiled. "Ryan, I hope you disagree with me about many things. It means you're thinking for yourself, and that's very important, even if it makes you sad. Ryan, I might feel sad if you disagree with me, but I'll never stop loving you because of it." Ryan hugged his grandpa. "Grandpa, I think you're the best grandpa in the world." "Ryan, I try to be the best grandpa I can be, and you all help me get better every day." That night, Richard told Catherine about his conversation with Ryan. "Richard, I think it's time we start sharing parts of this story with the kids in a way that's right for their age." "Catherine, I agree." Ryan's starting to ask deeper questions about family relationships. "Richard, what do you think about talking to Emily about this? Maybe she'd want to be part of this conversation with Ryan and Sophie. That's a good idea. After all, it's her story too. The following Sunday, Richard brought it up during family lunch. Emily, Ryan's starting to ask questions about our family. I think it's time we begin telling them, in the right way, how our family overcame hard times. Emily thought for a moment. Dad, what kind of questions is he asking? He wants to know if we ever fought, if it's normal to disagree with parents, things like that. Dad, I think it's important for Ryan and Sophie to understand that real families go through conflicts, but they can work things out by talking. Michael agreed. I think so too. It's better they know conflicts are normal than grow up thinking perfect families exist. Nathan added. And most importantly, they should know our family knew how to solve problems. That'll give them security. Richard felt emotional seeing how the whole family agreed on sharing these lessons with the next generation. So here's what we'll do, said Emily. We'll tell the story little by little as they grow and ask questions. Always focusing on the lessons learned, not the painful moments. I agree, said Richard, and we'll always make it clear our family is strong and united now. 2 months later, while playing in the backyard, Sophie approached Richard with an unexpected question. Grandpa, why aren't you in Mommy's wedding photos? Richard looked at Emily, who nodded, giving him permission to answer. Sophie, back then Grandpa and Mommy were going through a hard time. Sometimes when people disagree a lot, they need to be apart for a while. But did you love each other? We always loved each other, Sophie. But we needed to learn how to love each other better. And now you know, now we do. That's why our family is always together and happy. Sophie seemed satisfied and went back to playing. Richard realized the kids accepted these simple explanations more easily than he'd imagined. Over the years, Ryan and Sophie occasionally asked more questions about their family's story, and Richard and Emily always answered honestly, in ways suited to their age. The children grew up knowing their family had faced struggles, but had overcome them through love and communication. When Ryan turned 15, Richard decided it was time to tell the full story. One Saturday afternoon, he called his grandson for a special talk. Ryan, you're becoming a young man. I think it's time I share with you the whole story about how our family learned to love each other better. Ryan was curious. Grandpa, was it really that bad? It was painful, Ryan, but it was necessary for all of us to grow. Richard told the whole story. The mistakes he'd made as a father, Emily's brave decision to set boundaries, the period of distance, the process of reconciliation, and most importantly, the lessons everyone had learned. Ryan listened carefully, asking occasional questions to better understand certain points. Grandpa, do you regret trying to start the business? No, Ryan. I regret doing it without properly considering the impact on the family. But I don't regret trying to build something of my own. And does Mom regret being tough on you? No, Ryan. Your mother did what she had to do to make me understand my mistakes. Grandpa, if I ever strongly disagree with you, could we end up fighting? Richard looked seriously at his grandson. Ryan, I hope you'll disagree with me when you feel it's necessary. And if a disagreement is serious, we'll talk it through until we resolve it. I've learned to listen and respect opinions different from mine. Even if I make you sad, Ryan, I might feel sad if you disagree with me, but I'll never stop loving you or wanting what's best for you. Grandpa, our family is really special, isn't it? Yes, Ryan, but not because we're perfect, it's because we've learned to handle our imperfections. That night, Ryan told his parents about the conversation with his grandfather. Emily was moved to hear that Richard had shared the full story. Ryan, what did you think of everything Grandpa told you? Mom, I think you're all really brave. Grandpa for admitting his mistakes and you for not accepting less than you deserved. Michael felt proud of his stepson's maturity. Ryan, this story is an example of how true love sometimes requires tough decisions. Dad, Michael, I get that. And I also understand that our family is strong because everyone knows how to talk through problems. Nathan, who was also there, added, Ryan, the most important thing is that you and Sophie are growing up in a family where you know you can express your opinions without fear. Uncle Nathan, do you think Sophie and I will face similar conflicts when we grow up? Emily answered, Ryan, all relationships have conflicts sometimes, But you're learning from a young age to talk through problems, so any conflict that comes up will be resolved through dialogue. Ryan smiled. Mum, I feel really safe knowing our family knows how to work things out. 3 years later, when Sophie turned 15, Richard repeated the process, telling her the full story too. Sophie had a reaction similar to Ryan's, showing maturity and understanding about the complexity of family relationships. Grandpa, I really admire Mom's courage, said Sophie. It must have been so hard for her to make that decision. It was very hard for her, Sophie, but she knew it was necessary. And Grandpa, I admire your humility to admit your mistakes and change. Sophie, it was the only way to get back what really mattered. My family. Grandpa, if I ever need to make a tough decision about relationships, will you help me? Always, Sophie. Grandpa learned that supporting doesn't mean agreeing with everything, but being there during the hard times. Now, 15 years after that painful day when Richard watched Emily's wedding online, the family had become an example of how it's possible to turn crises into growth. Richard, at 60 years old, was a completely different man than he had been. Wiser, humbler, more present. His accounting firm thrived, but he never again put work above family. Emily, now 40, had become a strong and professionally successful woman, but also a loving mother and a daughter who deeply valued her relationship with her father. Michael had established himself as an excellent husband and father and maintained a respectful and affectionate relationship with Richard. Nathan had married and had a young daughter. Richard was now a grandfather to 3 children and applied the lessons he had learned with all of them. Ryan and Sophie, now teenagers, were confident and secure young people who knew they could rely on a solid and loving family. Catherine, who had been the stabilizing force throughout the crisis, remained the heart of the family, the one who kept everyone united and connected. One Sunday afternoon, the whole family gathered to celebrate Catherine's birthday. 3 generations sat around the same table, talking, laughing, sharing stories. Richard looked around the table and felt profound gratitude. Not gratitude because everything had turned out easily, but gratitude for the hard lessons that had made them all better people. Everyone, Richard said, raising a glass, I'd like to make a toast. Everyone raised their glasses, waiting. I want to toast our family, not because we're perfect, but because we've learned that true love is the kind that grows through difficulties, that strengthens with resolved conflicts, that deepens with lessons learned. I toast Emily, who had the courage to teach me that being a father is about respect, not control. I toast Catherine, who kept us together even in the hardest moments. I toast Nathan, who was always the bridge between all of us. I toast Michael, who became a son to me. I toast Ryan and Sophie, who are growing up in a family where they know they're loved unconditionally. And most of all, I toast the love that binds us, a love that isn't perfect but is true, a love that grows, learns, forgives, and builds. Everyone raised their glasses, moved. Ryan, now 18, asked to speak. Grandpa, I want to thank you for teaching us that real families go through hardships, but love is stronger than any problem. Sophie, 15, added, and I want to thank you for showing me that it's possible to disagree with the people we love without stopping loving them. Emily, tears in her eyes, looked at her father. Dad, thank you for teaching me it's never too late to change and grow. Michael said, Richard, thank you for welcoming me as a son and for being an example of how a man can acknowledge his mistakes and become better. Nathan joked, Dad, thanks for making our family more interesting with all that drama. Everyone laughed, including Richard. Catherine, emotional, made the final comment. Richard, I'm so proud of the man you've become. And most of all, I'm grateful our family has learned that true love doesn't avoid conflicts, but turns them into opportunities for growth. That night, after everyone had left, Richard and Catherine stayed alone on the porch, as they had for so many years. Richard, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? Richard thought for a long moment. Catherine, that's a hard question. Part of me wishes I could have spared us all the pain we caused each other, but another part of me knows that without that crisis we never would have grown the way we did. Richard, do you think our family would be as close today if we hadn't gone through those hardships? Honestly, No, I think we'd be a superficially harmonious family, but without the depth and authenticity we have now. Richard, what is your greatest hope for our grandchildren? That they grow up knowing they can be their true selves with us, that they can disagree, make mistakes, have different opinions, and still be loved unconditionally. And your greatest hope for our family as a whole? That we keep growing together, that we never stop learning from one another, and that we always remember true love isn't about avoiding conflict, but resolving it with respect and care. Catherine nestled into Richard's arm. Richard, we've built something truly beautiful. Catherine, we've built something real, and that's far more valuable than something perfect. 2 weeks later, Richard got an unexpected call. It was an old college friend who had gone through something similar with his daughter. Richard, remember me? It's Robert from the accounting class. Of course, Robert. How are you? Richard, I'm going through a really tough time with my daughter. I heard you went through something like this a few years ago. Could we talk? Richard hesitated for a moment, but then realized he might be able to help someone with the lessons he'd learned. Of course, Robert, let's grab coffee. 2 days later, Richard met Robert at a cafe downtown. His friend looked worn out and exhausted. Richard, my daughter hasn't spoken to me in 8 months. She thinks I interfere too much in her life. Robert, tell me what happened. Robert explained he'd tried to convince his daughter not to marry her boyfriend, thinking she was too young and that he wasn't right for her. She'd gotten fed up with his constant meddling and cut off contact. Richard, I just want to protect her. She's making a mistake. Richard remembered himself years ago, absolutely certain he knew what was best for Emily. Robert, can I ask? I owe something. How old is your daughter? 26. And is she a responsible, intelligent person? Yes, always has been. Robert, then why do you think she isn't capable of making her own decisions about relationships? Robert fell silent, clearly reflecting on the question. Richard, I'm just afraid she'll get hurt. Robert, I get that. But think about, will she learn more by making her own choices and facing the consequences, or by you making them for her? When you put it that way, Robert, I learned the hard way that our job as parents isn't to stop our kids from making mistakes. It's to support them when they do and help them learn. Richard shared a shortened version of his own story with Emily, focusing on the lessons he'd learned. Richard, what if my daughter really is making a mistake? Robert, what if she isn't? What if you're the one seeing things wrong? And even if she is, she has the right to make her own mistakes. Richard, how do I fix things with her? First, you have to admit you were wrong for trying to control her decisions. Second, you need to genuinely apologize. And third, you have to actually change how you relate to her. Change how? Robert, you'll have to learn to support without controlling, to give advice only when asked, to respect her choices, even when you disagree. Robert looked discouraged. Richard, that's so hard for a father. It is hard, Robert, but it's the only way to have a healthy relationship with adult children. Richard, what if she never forgives me? Robert, if you truly change, show that change through consistent actions and respect her time, I believe you can reconcile. The two talked for another 2 hours. Richard shared details about how he had changed his approach with Emily, how he had learned to respect her autonomy, and how it had strengthened their relationship. When they said goodbye, Robert was more hopeful. Richard, thank you so much. You've given me a completely different perspective. Robert, remember, real change takes time. Be patient with yourself and your daughter. 6 months later, Robert called Richard again. Richard, I wanted to thank you. I managed to reconcile with my daughter. Robert, that's wonderful news. How did it happen? Just like you said. I wrote a letter apologizing and acknowledging my mistakes. Then I started changing how I acted. I stopped giving unsolicited advice and began respecting her decisions. It took time, but she noticed I had truly changed. And how are things now? Much better, Richard. Our relationship is more mature and healthy. And you know what's interesting? Her boyfriend, who I thought was no good, is actually a really great guy. I was the one with the prejudice, Richard smiled. Robert, those are the kinds of discoveries we only make when we open our minds to possibilities different from what we imagined. Richard, You saved me from losing my daughter forever. Robert, you saved yourself. You had the courage to acknowledge your mistakes and change. I just shared my experience. After that conversation, Richard realized his story could help other families. He began thinking about writing about his experience, or perhaps giving talks on family relationships. When he mentioned the idea to Emily, she was excited. "Dad, I think it's a wonderful idea. Our story could help so many families." "Emily, would you feel comfortable if I shared our story publicly?" "Dad, I'd be honored. If our experience can prevent other families from going through what we did or help them reconcile, I think we should share it." "Emily, would you like to participate? Share the daughter's perspective." "Dad, I'd love to. I think it would be even more powerful if we told the story together." Richard was moved by his daughter's response. "Emily, that would mean so much to me." "Dad, our story is about transformation, growth, and the power of true love. Those are messages the world needs to hear." In the following months, Richard and Emily worked together on creating talks about family relationships. They developed a presentation where they told their story, each sharing their perspective and discussed the lessons they'd learned. The first talk was at a local community parents' school. About 50 people were in the audience, many of them struggling with conflicts involving their teenage or young adult children. Richard began by telling his part of the story, the mistakes he'd made, the justifications he'd given himself, the pain of watching his daughter's wedding online. Emily then shared her perspective, the disappointment she'd felt, her need to set boundaries, the difficulty of deciding to exclude her father from the wedding. Together, they explained the reconciliation process, how Richard had genuinely changed, how Emily had learned to forgive without forgetting, and how they'd built a new, healthier relationship. The audience reacted very positively. During the Q&A, several parents shared similar stories and asked for specific advice. One mother raised her hand. "Emily, how did you know your father had truly changed?" "Through his actions," Emily replied. "He stopped trying to convince me he was right. He stopped making excuses. He started really listening to what I was saying. And most importantly, he began respecting my decisions, even when he didn't agree with them." A father asked Richard, "How did you manage to change something so deeply rooted in you?" "It was very difficult," Richard replied. "I had to question everything I believed about being a father. I had to accept that my daughter was an independent person, not an extension of myself. And I had to learn that supporting doesn't mean controlling." After the lecture, several parents approached them to talk individually. Richard and Emily realized there was a great need for guidance on these topics. They decided to continue giving talks, always focusing on the message that family conflicts can be transformed into opportunities for growth. 2 years later, Richard and Emily had already spoken to over 1,000 people in different cities across the state. They constantly received messages from families who had been inspired by their story to resolve their own conflicts. One of these messages was particularly touching. It was from a 30-year-old daughter who hadn't spoken to her father in 5 years. "Richard and Emily, watching your lecture changed my perspective on my family situation. I realized my father, just like Richard, was trying to show love in the way he knew how, even if it wasn't perfect. Inspired by Emily's courage to give a second chance, I decided to reach out to my dad. Today, we have a wonderful relationship. Thank you for sharing your story." Messages like this confirmed for Richard and Emily that they were doing the right thing by sharing their experiences. During one of the lectures, a young man in the audience asked a question that surprised Richard. "Richard, do you think every father should go through a crisis like yours to learn these lessons?" Richard thought carefully before answering. "No, I wouldn't wish the pain we went through on any father, but I would wish for every father to learn the lessons we did. That respecting your children's independence strengthens the relationship, not weakens it. That supporting doesn't mean controlling. That true love sometimes requires letting your children make their own decisions, even when we disagree." Emily added, "And I would wish for every child to know they have the right to set healthy boundaries with their parents, and that doing so doesn't mean they don't love their family." After 3 years of giving lectures, Richard decided to write a book telling the whole story. He wanted to reach an even wider audience and leave a permanent record of the lessons they'd learned. The book was titled The Wedding I Watched Online: How a Family Crisis Transformed into Growth. Emily wrote a few chapters sharing her perspective, and Michael and Nathan contributed reflections on how the crisis had affected the entire family. When the book was released, Richard organized a celebration for the whole family. During the event, Ryan, now 21 and studying psychology, gave an emotional speech. "Grandpa, I'm so proud to have grown up knowing this story. It taught me that healthy relationships take work, honesty, and mutual respect. And it showed me it's never too late to change and grow." Sophie, now 18, added, "Grandpa, our family story has given me so much confidence to be authentic in all my relationships. I know I can disagree with the people I love without losing that love." Richard was deeply moved. "Ryan and Sophie, you two are proof that the lessons we learned were worth all the pain. You're growing into confident, authentic people capable of healthy relationships." Emily walked up to her father. "Dad, 20 years ago, if someone had told me we'd be here today launching a book about our story, I wouldn't have believed it. Emily, 20 years ago, I couldn't even imagine a reconciliation as deep and transformative as ours." Catherine, now 70 years old but still vibrant and wise, made the final observation of the evening. "My dear family, what makes me proudest of our story isn't that we managed to solve our problems. It's that we turned our problems into wisdom that can now help other families." Richard embraced Catherine. "Catherine, thank you for being the strength that held our family together through the toughest times." "Richard, I always knew our family's love was strong enough to overcome any crisis. Sometimes we just needed time and patience for that love to find mature ways to express itself." That night, Richard went home with his heart overflowing with gratitude. He thought about the man he had been 15 years earlier, someone who thought he knew everything about being a father, who believed love meant control and overprotection. Now he was a man who understood that being a father was about supporting without controlling, being present without intruding, loving without smothering. It was about respecting his children's individuality and celebrating the unique people they had become. Richard glanced at the computer where, so many years ago, he had watched Emily's wedding with a broken heart. Now that same computer held hundreds of messages from families who had been inspired by their story to resolve their own conflicts. He opened the file where he had saved the link to the wedding livestream. But this time, instead of watching with pain, he watched with gratitude. Gratitude that such a painful moment had been the catalyst for such profound transformation. On the screen, he saw Emily again, walking down the aisle, radiant and independent, Nathan giving her away with dignity. The beautiful, emotional ceremony. But now he saw it all with different eyes. He saw a daughter brave enough to set necessary boundaries. He saw a son who knew how to step up when needed. He saw a family that, even in crisis, held on to love and respect for one another. "Thank you, Emily," Richard said to the screen. "Thank you for teaching me how to be a better father. Thank you for having the courage to confront me when I needed to be confronted. And thank you for giving me the chance to become the father you deserved." Richard closed the file and went to bed with peace in his heart. He knew he had become the man he was always meant to be, and he knew his family was ready to face any future challenge because they had learned the most important lessons about love, respect, and forgiveness. The next day, Richard received a call from Emily. "Dad, Michael and I have some news for you." "What news?" "We're expecting our third child." Richard beamed. "Emily, what wonderful news. How are you feeling?" "We're so happy, Dad, and we know we can count on you and Mom for support." "Always, sweetheart, always." "Dad, can I tell you something?" Of course. I'm not worried at all about how you'll be with this baby. I know you'll be the perfect grandfather." Tears welled in Richard's eyes. "Emily, that means everything to me." "Dad, you've become the man I always knew you could be, and our kids are so lucky to have you as their grandpa." When Richard hung up, he felt complete. Not just because he was going to be a grandfather again, but because his daughter trusted him completely. She trusted the person he had become. Later that day, Richard went to visit Catherine to share the news. Catherine, we're going to be grandparents again. Richard, what joy. Is Emily doing well? She's great. And, Catherine, do you know what made me happiest? What? She said she wasn't worried at all about how I'd be with this baby. That she completely trusts me as a grandfather. Catherine hugged Richard. Richard, you've earned that trust. Through years of consistent and loving actions. Catherine, remember when Emily didn't let me attend her wedding? Too? At the time, it destroyed me. I thought it was the end of everything, but now I realize it was the beginning of the best phase of my life as a father. Richard, sometimes God allows us to go through deep pain to transform us into the people we need to be. Catherine, if I could talk to the Richard from 15 years ago, the one watching the wedding online, do you know what I'd say? What? I'd say, Richard, this is just the beginning. The pain you're feeling will turn into the greatest blessing of your life. Your daughter is teaching you to be a better father. Trust the process. Catherine smiled. Richard, and if you could talk to Emily from back then, what would you say? Richard thought for a moment. I'd say, Emily, thank you for having the courage to set boundaries. Thank you for not accepting less than you deserved. Thank you for loving me enough to confront me when I needed to be confronted. That night, Richard wrote a new entry in his journal, something he'd started doing after reconciling with Emily. Today I got the news that I'll be a grandfather for the 4th time. But what moved me the most was feeling Emily's complete trust in me. She knows she can count on me as a grandfather, as a father, as support. 15 years ago, when I watched her wedding online, I felt like a total failure as a parent. Today, I know that painful moment was the catalyst for me to become the father I should have always been. I've learned that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to grow, to change, to acknowledge mistakes, and strive to be better. I've learned that loving your children isn't about shielding them from every hardship, but equipping them to face challenges. I've learned that respecting your children's autonomy strengthens family bonds, not weakens them. And most of all, I've learned it's never too late to change, to grow, to become a better version of yourself. My family today is stronger, more united, and more authentic than ever before. Not because we avoided conflicts, but because we learned to resolve them in healthy ways. I'm grateful for every pain we went through because it brought us to where we are today. I'm grateful for Emily's courage in confronting me. I'm grateful for Catherine's support during the hardest moments. I'm grateful for Michael and Nathan's patience. And I'm grateful for the grandchildren growing up in a family that knows how to show true love. If I could leave a legacy for the next generations of my family, it would be this. True love doesn't avoid conflict, but transforms it into opportunities for growth. The strongest families aren't those that never face problems, but those that know how to solve them together. Today I feel fulfilled as a father, a grandfather, a husband, and a man. Not because my life is perfect, but because I've learned to live authentically and lovingly. 6 months after the announcement of Emily's 3rd pregnancy, Richard received a call that would completely change the course of his life. It was from an editor at a major national publishing house. Mr. Richard Mitchell, this is Daniel Williams from Horizon Publishing. We read your book and were deeply impressed by your story. Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad you liked it. Richard, we'd like to propose something bigger. We want to turn your story into a series of books on family relationships and also create a nationwide program of talks and workshops. Richard was silent for a moment, processing the offer. Daniel, that's very generous, but I need to talk. To my family first. Of course, Richard. But let me explain our vision. We believe your story could impact millions of families in the United States. We want to create a national movement for family reconciliation. Daniel, can I ask what exactly you have in mind? We want you and Emily to travel across the country giving lectures. We want to create a family relationships institute. We want to make you both national authorities on the subject. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. That proposal went against everything he had learned about priorities and boundaries. Daniel, I really appreciate the offer, but I need to think about it. Can I get back to you in a week? Of course, Richard, but don't take too long. This opportunity could completely change your lives. After hanging up, Richard was unsettled. The offer was tempting, but he knew accepting would mean putting work above family again. That night, he talked to Catherine about the call. "Catherine, what do you think of this proposal?" "Richard, my first concern is, won't this pull us away from our family again?" "That's my concern too. Traveling the country, constantly giving lectures, starting an institute. It would take so much time away from home." "Richard, have you learned anything these past few years?" "I've learned that family comes first, always." "Then what's your answer?" "I think I need to say no, or at least propose a much more limited version of the idea." The next day, Richard spoke with Emily about the offer. "Dad, it's an incredible opportunity, but I have my worries too." "What worries?" "Dad, I'm pregnant. Ryan is in college. Sophie is in high school. This isn't the time for us to become national speakers." "Emily, I felt the same way. It seems like accepting this would mean repeating the same mistakes from the past." "Dad, but maybe we can find a middle ground. Do some regional talks, write another book, but without turning it into a nationwide business." "Emily, would you be willing to keep giving some local lectures?" "Yes, Dad, as long as it's controlled and doesn't interfere with our family life." Richard called Daniel back the next day. "Daniel, I talked with my family. We can't accept the proposal as you presented it." "Richard, can I ask why?" "Because we've learned that family comes first. Accepting something that requires constant travel would mean repeating past mistakes." "Richard, but you'd be passing up a unique chance to impact the country." "Daniel, I'd rather deeply impact a few hundred local families than superficially reach millions nationwide." "Richard, can I make a counteroffer?" "Go ahead. What if we limited it to just 4 lectures a year in major cities and a few additional books?" Richard considered it. "Daniel, let me talk to my family again." When Richard presented the counteroffer to Emily and Catherine, they were more open. "Dad, 4 lectures a year is manageable," Emily said, "especially if you include me in only 2 of them because of the pregnancy and the kids." "Richard, as long as the commitments are planned ahead and don't interfere with important family events, I support it," Catherine said. Richard called Daniel back and accepted the modified counteroffer. 3 months later, Richard and Emily gave their first national lecture at a family conference in Philadelphia. The audience had over 1,000 people, and the reception was extraordinary. During the Q&A, a mother raised her hand. "Emily, my daughter hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. How can I apply your teachings to my situation?" "The first thing," Emily replied, "is to honestly ask yourself, what were your mistakes in the relationship? Not to blame yourself, but to understand what needs to change. And then you need to truly change, not just promise it. Show through actions that you've learned to respect your daughter's independence." Richard added, "And most importantly, don't expect immediate results. True reconciliation takes time and requires patience." After the lecture, dozens of people approached them to share their own stories and ask for specific advice. Richard and Emily were moved to see how many families were going through similar situations. On the flight back to Chicago, Emily talked to Richard about the experience. "Dad, it's amazing to see how our story resonates with so many people." "Yes, Emily, but it's also a reminder that we need to stay grounded. Our priority is still our own family." "Dad, can I confess something?" "Of course." During the lecture, when that mother asked about her daughter who wasn't speaking to her, I remembered how I felt when I was angry with you, and I felt so grateful that we got past that. "Emily, I felt the same way, and I'm grateful you had the courage to confront me when you needed to." "Dad, our story really can help a lot of families, but you're right. We can't let it become more important than our own family." 2 weeks after the lecture in Philadelphia, Richard received an unexpected call. It was from Robert, the friend who had asked for advice about his daughter a year earlier. "Richard, I need your help again." "What happened, Robert? I thought you and your daughter had reconciled." "We did, but now I'm having problems with my son-in-law." Richard sighed. "Robert, tell me what's going on." "Richard, my daughter got married last month. The wedding was beautiful. I was part of everything. But now I feel like her husband isn't good enough for her." "Robert, are they happy together?" "They seem to be, but Richard, he lacks ambition. He has a simple job, no plans to grow professionally." Robert, does your daughter complain about it? No, she seems happy, but I think she deserves more. Richard immediately recognized the thought pattern. Robert, can I ask you a direct question? Of course. Are you trying to control your daughter's life again? Robert fell silent. Robert, do you remember what we talked about respecting our adult children's decisions? I do, Richard, but this is different. This time I'm right. Robert, that's exactly what I thought when I tried to control Emily's decisions. I was sure I was right. But Richard, what if I really am right this time? Robert, even if you are, your daughter has the right to make her own mistakes and learn from them. Robert sighed. Richard, it's so hard to stay quiet when we see our kids making choices we think are bad. It is hard, Robert, but it's necessary if we want to keep a healthy relationship with them. Richard, don't you ever feel like giving your opinion about Emily's decisions? I do, Robert, but I've learned to only speak up when she asks for my opinion, and most importantly, I've learned to accept when she disagrees with me. The conversation with Robert made Richard reflect on his own ongoing challenges as a father. Even after years of growth and learning, he still had to constantly check himself to avoid falling back into old patterns. That night, Richard talked to Catherine about Robert's call. Catherine, sometimes it worries me that even after everything we've learned, I still have impulses to control our kids' decisions. Richard, that's normal. What matters is that now you're aware of those impulses and know how to handle them. Catherine, have you ever felt like giving your opinion about one of Emily's decisions recently? Yes, Richard. When she decided to keep working during her pregnancy, my first reaction was to suggest she take leave earlier. And what did you do? I took a deep breath and remembered that she's a grown woman, capable of making her own decisions about her body and career. Catherine, it's comforting to know you also have these impulses sometimes. Richard, being a father and mother is a constant exercise in self-control. What matters is that now we know when we're crossing boundaries. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing. 2 months later, Emily gave birth to her third child, a boy named Jacob. Richard was in the hospital waiting room, this time with a heart full of pure joy, without a shadow of conflict or tension. When Emily introduced Jacob to his grandfather, Richard was deeply moved. Emily, he's beautiful. How are you feeling? I'm okay, Dad. Tired, but happy. Emily, can I hold my grandson? Of course, Dad. You're his grandfather. Richard cradled Jacob with the same care he had shown Ryan and Sophie years before. But this time, there was a special serenity in the moment. Emily, thank you for including me in all these important moments. Thank you for trusting me as his grandfather. Dad, you've earned that trust, and Jacob will grow up knowing he can count on a present and loving grandfather. Michael approached Richard. Richard, Jacob is so lucky to have you as his grandfather. Michael, thank you, and congratulations on your son. You've built a beautiful family. Catherine arrived at the hospital soon after, radiant with the arrival of her third grandchild. Richard, how are you feeling? Complete, Catherine, absolutely complete. Nathan and his wife Jennifer also came to meet their nephew. The whole family was gathered in the hospital room, celebrating Jacob's arrival. Ryan, now 22, held his baby brother very carefully. Mom, he's so tiny. You were just like that when you were born, Ryan. Sophie, now 19, was enchanted by her brother. Mom, can I help take care of him? Of course, Sophie. It'll be wonderful to have an older sister helping out. Richard watched the entire scene with deep gratitude. His family was united, happy, and full of love. All those years of pain and growth had been worth it to reach this moment. When they returned home, Richard helped Emily and Michael get the house ready for Jacob. He set up the crib, organized the baby clothes, and prepared meals for the family. Dad, thank you for all your help, said Emily. Having you here makes everything easier. Emily, it's my pleasure and my responsibility to support you all right now. Dad, can I ask you a favor? Of course. When Jacob grows up and starts asking questions about our family, I want you to tell him our story too. I want him to know families can overcome any hardship. Emily, it'll be an honor to share our story with Jacob. In the weeks that followed, Richard dedicated himself entirely to helping with Jacob and supporting the family. He cancelled 2 work commitments to be more present. Catherine watched Richard caring for his grandson with admiration. "Richard, you really did learn your lessons, didn't you?" "What do you mean?" 15 years ago, you would have been torn between work and family. Now you don't even hesitate. Family comes first. Catherine, those lessons were painful to learn, but they completely changed my perspective on priorities. A month after Jacob's birth, Richard was watching over his grandson while Emily rested when the baby began crying inconsolably. Richard tried everything, changing his diaper, giving him a bottle, rocking him, singing. Nothing worked. Jacob kept crying desperately. Worried, Richard called Emily. "Emily, Jacob won't stop crying. I've tried everything I know." Emily took her son in her arms, but Jacob kept crying. "Dad, I think we need to take him to the pediatrician. This crying isn't normal." Michael came home from work just as they were leaving for the hospital. "What's going on?" "Michael, Jacob has been crying non-stop for 2 hours. We're going to the ER," Emily explained. Richard offered to drive, and the whole family rushed to the hospital. In the emergency room, the pediatrician examined Jacob carefully. "It's intestinal colic, a bit more intense than usual," the doctor diagnosed. "Nothing serious, but it can be very uncomfortable for the baby." "Doctor, what can we do?" Michael asked. "I'll prescribe some medication to ease the discomfort. You can also try gentle massages on his tummy." Richard felt relieved, but noticed Emily was still very tense. "Sweetheart, the doctor said it's nothing serious." "Dad, I know, but when your child is suffering, you can't help but panic." "Emily, I understand completely. When you and your siblings were little, Catherine and I would panic over every little thing too." Michael hugged Emily. "Honey, Jacob will be fine. Colic is normal for babies." Back at home, Richard helped Emily and Michael care for Jacob during the difficult days of colic. He took turns with them during the late nights, massaged the baby's tummy, and prepared his medication. "Dad, thank you for being here," Emily said one night after finally calming Jacob down. "Emily, this is where I want to be, where I should have always been." "Dad, you've always been there when it really mattered." "Emily, not always. There was a time I lost sight of what truly mattered." "Dad, but you learned, and now Jacob will grow up with a grandfather who knows exactly where his priorities lie." After a week, Jacob completely recovered from the colic. The whole family breathed a sigh of relief, and Richard felt grateful for being present during that challenging time. 3 months after Jacob's birth, Richard received an invitation that left him conflicted. It was for a national television program where he'd speak about family relationships. "Catherine, what do you think?" "Richard, it depends. How long would you be away? It's just a 1-day recording in Chicago, no travel required." "Richard, if it's only 1 day and in Chicago, I think it could be a great opportunity to reach more families." Richard talked to Emily about the invitation. "Dad, I think you should accept. It's a chance to share our story with an even bigger audience." "Emily, aren't you worried this might lead to bigger offers that could distract us from what's important?" "Dad, I trust you now to set boundaries. If any proposals come up that would disrupt our family life, I know you'll say no." Richard accepted the invitation and appeared on the show. The interview was well received, and he got hundreds of messages from families thanking him for sharing his story. One message in particular moved him deeply. It was from a 50-year-old mother. "Richard, I watched your interview and cried from start to finish. I haven't spoken to my daughter in 3 years because of a conflict over her career choices. Your story made me realize I was trying to control her life instead of supporting her. Today, I'm calling her to apologize. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to change." Richard showed the message to Emily, who was touched. "Dad, sharing our story is worth it just for messages like this." "Emily, every family that reconciles makes all our past suffering more meaningful." 2 weeks after the show aired, Richard got a call from Nathan. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious." "What's wrong, Nathan?" "Dad, Jennifer and I are having some problems in our marriage." Richard grew worried. "Nathan, what can I do to help?" "Dad, I'd like you to talk with us. You and Emily have learned so much about relationships." maybe you could give us some advice. Nathan, of course we can talk. But remember, we're not professional therapists. I know, Dad, but you have practical experience overcoming conflicts that could help us. Richard scheduled a conversation with Nathan and Jennifer for the following weekend. He invited Emily to join as well. On Saturday afternoon, Nathan and Jennifer arrived at Richard's house visibly tense. "Nathan, Jennifer, thank you for trusting us with this conversation," said Richard. "But first, we want to make it clear we're not professional counselors. We're just family members who've faced struggles and learned some lessons." Jennifer spoke first. "Richard, Emily, Nathan and I have been arguing a lot about finances. He wants me to quit my job to take more care of our daughter, but I love my career." Nathan defended himself. "Dad, it's not that I want to control Jennifer. It's just that our daughter is spending too much time at daycare, and I think it would be better to have her mother more present." Richard immediately recognized the familiar pattern, someone trying to impose their vision of what's best for the family. "Nathan, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Dad." "Did you talk with Jennifer about your concerns and genuinely listen to hers?" "I tried, but she doesn't want to hear me." Jennifer got upset. "Nathan, you didn't try to listen to me. You came with a ready-made decision and expected me to accept it." Emily stepped in. "Jennifer, Nathan, you're repeating a pattern we know well. One person has an opinion and tries to force it on the other, instead of building a solution together." "Yes, what do you mean?" asked Nathan. Richard explained. "Nathan, what you're doing with Jennifer is similar to what I did with you when you were younger. I decided what I thought was best and expected you to accept it." "Dad, but I'm thinking about what's best for our family." "Nathan, I also thought I was doing what was best when I made unilateral decisions. But I learned family decisions need to be built together." Emily added, "Nathan, instead of trying to convince Jennifer that your opinion is right, why don't you both talk about each other's concerns and build a solution that works for both?" Jennifer seemed interested. "How so?" "Jennifer, why don't you explain to Nathan why your career is important to you? And Nathan, why don't you explain your concerns about your daughter without suggesting ready-made solutions?" Over the next 40 minutes, Nathan and Jennifer had a more productive conversation than they'd had in months. Nathan explained his worry that their daughter was spending too much time away from her parents. Jennifer explained that her career was an important part of her identity and that she felt professionally fulfilled. "Now you can think of solutions that address both of your concerns," Richard suggested. "How so?" asked Nathan. Emily explained. "Nathan, maybe you could find a daycare with more flexible hours, or perhaps you could adjust your work schedule to pick up your daughter earlier, or Jennifer could negotiate working from home a few days a week." "Oh, I see," said Jennifer. "Instead of one person giving up everything, we both make adjustments to solve the problem." "Exactly," said Richard. "Family solutions work best when everyone contributes a little." Nathan and Jennifer left the conversation much calmer, with several ideas to resolve their conflicts. A week later, Nathan called Richard. "Dad, thank you for last Saturday's talk. Did it work?" "A lot, Dad. Jennifer and I reached an agreement. She'll work 3 days from home and 2 in the office. I'll adjust my schedule to pick up our daughter from daycare earlier. And we found a smaller daycare closer to home." "Nathan, that's wonderful. Did you come up with this solution together?" "Yes, Dad. And it worked much better than trying to force an individual solution." Richard felt proud seeing Nathan applying their family lessons to his own marriage. That evening, Richard discussed Nathan's situation with Catherine. "Catherine, I'm so glad Nathan learned about collaborative relationships. Richard, it shows our children truly absorbed our teachings. They won't repeat our mistakes. I'm also grateful Nathan felt comfortable asking for help when he needed it. That means our family has developed a healthy culture of mutual support." 2 months later, Richard and Emily were invited for another national lecture, this time in Miami. Emily had fully recovered from childbirth and was excited to participate. During the trip, they talked about how their lecture partnership was evolving. "Dad, I really enjoy doing these lectures with you." "Emily, me too. It's a special way for us to work together. Do you think we should write a second book?" "I've Been considering that. Maybe one focused specifically on rebuilding relationships after conflict. We could include perspectives from other families who overcame similar crises. Great idea, Emily. We could interview some families who approached us after lectures. The Miami lecture was even more impactful than the previous one. The audience was highly engaged, asking thoughtful questions. During Q&A, a man around 60 raised his hand. "Richard, my son hasn't spoken to me in 10 years. Do you think there's still hope?" Richard answered sincerely, "Sir, it's never too late to try, but the change must be genuine and consistent. 10 years is a long time, so reconciliation, if it happens, will be a lengthy process. Where do I begin?" Start by honestly examining your mistakes in the relationship. Then write a letter taking full responsibility. No justifications or blaming your son. Most importantly, demonstrate change through actions, not just words. Emily added, "And sir, prepare yourself that your son might not be ready to forgive. Respect his timing, even if it's painful." After the lecture, the man approached Richard. "Richard, may I hug you?" "Of course." 10 years ago, I kicked my son out because he's gay. Now I realize it was the biggest mistake of my life." Richard was moved. "Acknowledging your mistake is the first step. Now you must show your son you've truly changed. Do you think he could ever forgive me after all this time?" "I can't promise, but a parent's love is incredibly strong. If you demonstrate genuine change and patience, there's always hope." The man left with tears in his eyes, but a more hopeful expression. On the flight back to Chicago, Emily reflected, "Dad, stories like that man's make me realize our situation was relatively simple." "How so?" "Our fight was about practical things, money, stability, priorities. But some families face much deeper issues." "Every family has unique challenges, Emily. We shouldn't downplay our experience because others had it worse." "You're right. Maybe that's why our story resonates. It shows even ordinary conflicts can be devastating, and reconciliation is always possible." 6 months later, Richard received a letter that deeply moved him. It was from the man who had asked the question in Miami. "Richard, I'm the gentleman who asked about my gay son during your talk in Miami. I want to tell you I followed your advice. I wrote a letter to my son admitting my mistakes and asking for forgiveness. I didn't expect a reply, but 3 months later, he called me. Now we talk every week. We're still rebuilding our new relationship, but there's hope. Thank you for giving me the courage to try. You saved my family." Richard showed the letter to Emily, who was touched. "Dad, this is amazing. 10 years apart, and they managed to reconcile." "Emily, this shows it's truly never too late to try, and that family love is stronger than any prejudice or pride. Dad, letters like this give me even more motivation to keep sharing our story." That same week, Richard got an unexpected call from Sophie, who was in college. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." "Of course, Sophie, what happened?" "Dad, I've been dating someone for 6 months and haven't told anyone in the family." Richard felt a tightness in his chest, but controlled himself to avoid reacting impulsively. "Sophie, thank you for trusting me. Do you want to tell me about him?" "Dad, his name is Matthew. He's studying medicine with me. He's a really good guy." "Sophie, why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Dad, I wanted to be sure it was serious before introducing him to the family, and I also wanted to see how you'd react." Richard realized he was being tested. "Sophie, I'm glad you felt comfortable telling me. When can I meet Matthew?" "Dad, would you and Mom like to have dinner with us next Saturday?" "Of course, Sophie. It'll be a pleasure to meet Matthew." After hanging up, Richard talked to Catherine about the conversation. "Catherine, Sophie's been dating for 6 months and only just told us." "Richard, how did you react?" "I tried to stay calm. I told her I'm happy she trusted me and that I'd like to meet Matthew." "Richard, that was the right reaction. Sophie was testing whether you'd try to interfere in her life." "Catherine, part of me wants to ask 1,000 questions about Matthew, their relationship, their plans." "Richard, so why aren't you asking those questions?" "Because I've learned Sophie will tell me what she wants to share in her own time. Pushing will only push her away." The following Saturday, Sophie arrived for dinner with Matthew, a pleasant young man of 22. Richard welcomed them naturally. "Matthew, welcome to our home." "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Sophie talks a lot about your family." During dinner, Richard asked polite questions about Matthew, but didn't press or investigate too much. "Matthew, do you enjoy studying medicine?" "Very much, Mr. Mitchell. I've always wanted to be a doctor. What specialty are you considering?" "I'm still deciding between pediatrics and cardiology." Richard noticed Sophie was carefully watching how he behaved with Matthew. Clearly, she was evaluating whether her father would respect her boyfriend. After dinner, when Sophie and Matthew left, Catherine spoke to Richard. "Richard, you did very well. You were friendly without being intrusive." "Catherine, it was hard to hold back. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions about their relationship. Richard, but you did hold back, and I'm sure Sophie noticed." The next day, Sophie called Richard. "Dad, thank you for dinner last night." "Sophie, it was a pleasure meeting Matthew. He seems like a wonderful young man." "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Dad, I was afraid of how you'd react to Matthew. But you were perfect. You didn't ask too many questions. You didn't try to interfere. Sophie, I've learned you'll share with me what you want to share in your own time." "Dad, that's exactly it. And I feel much more comfortable knowing I can bring Matthew here without worrying about interrogations." Richard felt proud of having passed Sophie's test. 3 months later, Richard and Emily began working on their second book, interviewing families who had overcome conflicts inspired by their story. One of the most touching interviews was with a mother and daughter who hadn't spoken in 5 years due to differences over marriage and career. "Your story made me realize I was trying to live my life through my daughter," the mother said. "When she decided to prioritize her career instead of marrying early, I felt like she was rejecting my values," the daughter added, "and I felt suffocated, like I couldn't be myself without disappointing my mom." "How did you resolve it?" Emily asked. "By following your example," the mother replied. "I wrote a letter admitting my mistakes and stopped trying to shape my daughter's life, and she had patience with me while I learned to respect her." "And how is your relationship now?" Richard asked. The daughter smiled. "Today, we're very close. Closer than we've ever been, because our relationship is now based on mutual respect, not control." Interviews like this confirmed for Richard and Emily that their story was truly helping other families overcome similar conflicts. 6 months later, when Jacob turned 1, Richard organized a special birthday party. The whole family was together. Catherine, Emily, Michael, Ryan, Sophie, Nathan, Jennifer, and her little daughter, and of course Jacob. During the party, Richard watched as the family interacted harmoniously. Ryan was playing with his little niece. Sophie was helping Emily with Jacob. Nathan and Michael were chatting animatedly about work. Catherine coordinated everything with her natural wisdom. "Catherine," Richard said, "look at what we've built." "Richard, look at what we've rebuilt. Our family is stronger today than it's ever been." "Catherine, sometimes I still can't believe we overcame all of that." "Richard, we didn't just overcome it. We turned our pain into wisdom that's now helping hundreds of other families." During the party, Ryan approached Richard. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Ryan." "Grandpa, do you regret going through all those problems with Mom?" Richard thought carefully about the question. "Ryan, I regret the pain we caused each other, but I don't regret the lessons we learned." "Why?" "Because without those lessons, our family wouldn't be as close and genuine as it is today." "Grandpa, is our family different from other families?" "Ryan, our family learned that conflicts aren't the end of the world. They're opportunities for growth. That does make us different." "Grandpa, if I ever have problems with my parents, will you help me?" Richard smiled. "Ryan, if you ever have problems with your parents, I'll help all of you talk and understand each other. I won't take sides." "Grandpa, you're really wise." "Ryan, I'm not wise. I just learned some important lessons through a lot of hardship." That night, after everyone had left, Richard and Catherine stayed behind cleaning up. "Richard, did you notice how our whole family now knows how to resolve conflicts in a healthy way?" "What do you mean?" "Catherine, during the party, Nathan and Jennifer had a small disagreement about when to leave. They talked it out quickly, reached an agreement, and that was it. No drama, no hurt feelings." "Richard, direct result of the lessons our family learned. Our children and grandchildren grew up seeing that it's possible to disagree without hurting each other. Catherine, that might be the most valuable legacy we can leave, a family that knows how to love in a mature and healthy way. 2 years later, when Jacob was 3 years old, Richard received a phone call that would once again change his perspective on his family's story. It was from a documentary filmmaker interested in making a film about their journey. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Kevin Anderson, a documentary filmmaker. I'd like to make a documentary about your family's story. Kevin, I appreciate the interest, but I'm not sure we want to expose our family like that. Mr. Mitchell, your story could inspire millions of families in the United States. The social impact would be enormous." Richard hesitated. "Kevin, I need to talk to my family first." "Of course, but Mr. Mitchell, just imagine how many families we could help with a nationwide documentary." After hanging up, Richard discussed the proposal with Catherine. "Catherine, what do you think?" "Richard, my first concern is our privacy. A documentary is much more invasive than books or talks." "That's my worry too, Catherine, and I'm afraid it could turn our family into a spectacle." "Richard, have you spoken to Emily yet?" "Not yet. I wanted to hear your thoughts first." "Richard, I think we should hear the full proposal before deciding. Maybe we can set boundaries to protect our privacy." Richard scheduled a meeting with Kevin for the following week, inviting Emily to join. At the meeting, Kevin presented his vision for the documentary. "We want to follow a typical American family going through conflicts and show how they apply your teachings to reconcile." "Kevin," Emily said, "so our role would be as consultants, not the main focus." "Exactly, Emily. You'd appear giving advice and guidance, but the spotlight would be on the family being helped." Richard liked the revised proposal better. "Kevin, this way, our privacy would be better protected." "Exactly, Richard. And the impact would be even greater because people would see the teachings applied in real life." Emily and Richard asked for a week to decide. During that time, they discussed the proposal with the whole family. Ryan, now 25 and already graduated, shared his thoughts. "Grandpa, I think you should do it, as long as our family isn't the main focus." Sophie, 22, agreed. "Dad, if the goal is to help another family, I think it's worth it." Nathan also supported the idea. "Dad, our story has already helped so many families individually. A documentary could multiply that impact." Catherine gave the final opinion. "Richard, I think we should accept, but with clear conditions about our involvement." Richard and Emily agreed to participate in the documentary, setting strict limits on how their family would be portrayed. The documentary followed a middle-class family from Denver who hadn't spoken in 3 years due to conflicts over sexual orientation. Richard and Emily appeared occasionally, offering advice and guidance to the family members. The filming process lasted 6 months, and Richard was moved to see the Denver family gradually reconciling. "Emily, it's amazing to see our story helping this family in real time. Dad, it's so rewarding to see our teachings actually work when applied by others." When the documentary was released, it had a massive nationwide impact. Richard and Emily received thousands of messages from families, thanking them for the inspiration and asking for advice. One message in particular deeply touched Richard. "Richard and Emily, watching the documentary, gave me the courage to call my father after 8 years of no contact. Today, we had lunch together for the first time since I came out as gay. Thank you for showing that family love is stronger than any prejudice." Messages like these confirmed that Richard and Emily were on the right path by sharing their story. 3 years after the documentary was released, Richard was about to turn 70 when he received an unexpected call. It was from Ryan, now married and expecting his first child. "Grandpa, I have some news for you." "What news, Ryan?" "Grandpa, you're going to be a great-grandfather." Richard was overcome with emotion. "Ryan, what wonderful news. How is Jessica doing?" "She's doing great, Grandpa. We're so happy." "Ryan, when is the baby due?" "In 6 months, Grandpa, and we want you to be very involved in your great-grandchild's life." Tears welled up in Richard's eyes. "Ryan, it will be the greatest honor of my life to be a great-grandfather." That night, Richard shared the news with Catherine. "Catherine, can you believe it? We're going to be great-grandparents. Richard, when Ryan was born, did you ever dream of this moment? Catherine, when Ryan was born, I could barely believe I had reconciled with Emily. I never imagined I'd live to see great-grandchildren. Richard, this is proof that our family didn't just survive the crisis. It thrived beyond anything we could have expected. 6 months later, Olivia was born, Richard's first great-granddaughter. When he held her for the first time, he felt an indescribable emotion. Catherine, look how many generations our family has now. And all united, all loving each other. Richard, Olivia will grow up in a family that knows how to resolve conflicts, how to love healthily, how to forgive and rebuild. Catherine, she'll never go through what we did. Because our family learned the necessary lessons. In the following months, Richard dedicated himself to being the best great-grandfather he could be. He took care of Olivia when Ryan and Jessica needed help, told her stories and played on the floor like a child. Emily watched Richard with Olivia and was moved. Dad, seeing you with Olivia reminds me of how you were with me when I was little. Emily, the difference is now I know how to cherish every moment. I don't get distracted by work or other worries. Dad, Olivia is so lucky to have you as her great-grandfather. Emily, I'm the lucky one to have lived long enough to meet my great-granddaughter and to have such a close-knit family for her to grow up in. 2 years later, when Olivia was starting to talk, Richard decided to write her a letter, similar to the ones he had written for Ryan and Sophie years before. To my dear great-granddaughter Olivia, when you read this letter, I probably won't be here anymore, but I want you to know our family's story and the lessons we've learned. Many years ago, before your dad Ryan was born, our family went through a major crisis. I made serious mistakes as a father and temporarily lost your grandmother Emily's trust. But our family learned that true love is stronger than any mistake. We learned it's possible to forgive without forgetting, to rebuild without repeating the same errors, to love in a mature and healthy way. Olivia, you're growing up in a family that knows how to solve problems by talking, that knows how to disagree without hurting, that knows how to support without controlling, that knows how to love truly. If you ever have conflicts with your parents or other family members, remember this story. Remember that conflicts are opportunities for growth, not the end of relationships. And most of all, remember, our family has a tradition of turning hardships into wisdom, pain into love, conflicts into unity. You are so loved, Olivia, by all of us, across all generations. And no matter what happens in life, you'll always have a family to come back to. With all the love in the world, your great-grandfather, Richard. Richard kept the letter with the others he had written for his grandchildren over the years. One day when Olivia was grown, she would know the full story of their family. That same year, Richard received an offer to write a third book, this time about maintaining healthy family relationships through the different stages of life. So, Emily, what do you think? Dad, I think we have a lot to share about this topic. Our family has been through every stage: conflicts, reconciliation, growth, new relationships, new challenges. Emily, would you co-author this time? Dad, it would be an honor. We could write about the different perspectives, yours as a father who learned to change, mine as a daughter who learned to forgive. The third book was the most successful of the three. Richard and Emily were invited to speak across the country, always mindful of their limits regarding travel and time away from family. During one of these talks in San Diego, a woman in the audience asked a question that stayed with Richard. Richard, do you think your story has a happy ending? Richard thought carefully before answering. Ma'am, our story doesn't have a happy ending. Our story has a happy present. Every day we choose to build healthy relationships. Every day we apply the lessons we've learned. Family happiness isn't a destination you reach, it's a path you choose to walk every day. The answer moved the audience and became one of the most quoted lines from Richard's books. 5 years later, when Richard was 75, he received a call that worried him. It was from Sophie, now 27 and married to Matthew. Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious. What's wrong, Sophie? Dad, Matthew and I are thinking about moving to London. He got a really good job offer there. Richard's heart tightened, but he steadied himself to avoid reacting impulsively. Sophie, tell me more about this opportunity. Dad, It's a renowned hospital, the specialization Matthew always wanted. It would be a once-in-a-lifetime chance for his career. Sophie, what about you? How do you feel about moving? Dad, I'm torn. On one hand, I know it would be great for Matthew. On the other, I'm sad about being away from family. Richard took a deep breath before responding. Sophie, how about you two come over for dinner this weekend? We can all talk about it together. Dad, you're not mad. Sophie, why would I be mad? You and Matthew are adults, capable of making your own decisions. Dad, I know you'll miss us. Of course I will, Sophie, but my job isn't to stop you from growing professionally. That weekend, Sophie and Matthew came for dinner. Richard made an effort to be supportive, even as he felt sadness about their possible departure. Matthew, tell me about this opportunity in London. Richard, it's a specialization in pediatric cardiac surgery, something I've always dreamed of doing. Matthew, it sounds like a truly special opportunity. Sophie watched closely as Richard responded. Dad, what do you think? Sophie, I think you two need to make the decision that's best for your lives. Our family will support you no matter what. Dad, even if we choose to go. Sophie, if you choose to go, we'll miss you terribly, but we'll cheer you on and stay in touch often. After dinner, when Sophie and Matthew left, Catherine spoke with Richard. Richard, are you really managing to be this mature about it? Catherine, it's not easy. Part of me wants to convince them to stay. But I've learned that trying to control your children's decisions is the fastest way to lose them. Richard, what if they really go to London? Catherine, we'll support them and visit when we can, and most of all, we'll hope they're happy. 2 weeks later, Sophie called Richard with their decision. Dad, Matthew and I decided to accept the offer. We're moving to London in 3 months. Richard felt deep sadness but kept his voice steady. Sophie, congratulations. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful experience for you both. Dad, thank you for supporting our decision. Sophie, supporting our children's decisions is part of true love. Dad, let's stay in constant touch, and we want you to visit us in London. Of course, Sophie, I can't wait to see London through your eyes. Over the next 3 months, Richard helped Sophie and Matthew with their moving preparations. He organized a farewell party, assisted with paperwork, and gave practical advice about moving abroad. On the day of their departure, the whole family gathered at the airport to say goodbye. Sophie, take good care of yourself, Richard said, hugging his daughter. Dad, thank you for teaching me that true love means letting go. Sophie, soar high, and remember, you'll always have a home here in the United States. As the plane took off, Richard cried. Catherine comforted him. Richard, you did the right thing. Catherine, I know I did, but it still hurts. Richard, the difference is that this time, the pain is temporary. Sophie left because she wanted to, not because she had to escape family conflicts. In the following months, Sophie stayed in constant contact with her family. She shared stories about her new life in London, Matthew's work, and the experiences they were having. 6 months after the move, Sophie video called the entire family. Everyone, I have some news for you. What news? Emily asked. I'm pregnant. The whole family erupted in joy. Richard was moved. Sophie, what wonderful news. How are you feeling? Yeah, I'm good, Dad. A little nauseous, but happy. Sophie, when is the baby due? In 7 months, Dad, and we want you to come to London to meet your grandchild. Richard beamed. Sophie, I wouldn't miss it for the world. 7 months later, Richard and Catherine traveled to London to meet their new grandson, a boy named Ethan. Sophie, he's beautiful, Richard said, holding his grandson. Dad, thank you for coming. It means so much to have you here. Sophie, I wouldn't have missed this moment for anything. During their stay in London, Richard noticed how happy and fulfilled Sophie and Matthew were. The move had truly been good for them. Sophie, you both look radiant. Moving to London was the right choice. It was, Dad. And you know, what makes me happiest? What? Knowing our family stays united despite the distance, that the love we have for each other doesn't depend on physical closeness. Richard was moved. Sophie, that's the greatest proof our family has truly grown. On the flight back to the United States, Richard talked with Catherine about the trip. Catherine, seeing Sophie so happy and fulfilled, makes up for all the longing. Richard, you made the right decision supporting their move. Catherine, and most importantly, our relationship with Sophie is stronger than ever because she knows we support her unconditionally. 2 years later, when Ethan was 2, Sophie announced that she and Matthew were considering returning to the United States. Dad, Matthew finished his specialization. Now we want Ethan to grow up near family. Richard was happy but kept his composure. Sophie, are you sure you want to come back? We are, Dad. London was a wonderful experience, but the United States is our home. Sophie, you'll be more than welcome back, but only return if it's truly what you want. Dad, thank you for not pressuring us. That makes our decision even more special. 6 months later, Sophie, Matthew, and Ethan returned to the United States. Richard organized a welcome party with the whole family. Sophie, it's so good to have you back, Richard said, hugging his daughter and grandson. Dad, it's good to be home. Sophie, did London change you? It did, Dad. It made us more independent, more confident, but it also made us appreciate our family even more. That night, Richard reflected on how his family had evolved. They had learned that true love isn't possessive, that supporting our children's choices, even when difficult, strengthens family bonds. 3 years later, when Richard turned 80, he decided to write his final memoirs about their family journey. The book was titled 80 Years of Lessons. How a Family Learned to Love Truly, and included reflections on every phase the family had gone through. At the book launch, the entire family was present. Catherine, Emily, Michael, Ryan, Jessica, Olivia, Sophie, Matthew, Ethan, Nathan, Jennifer and their children, and Jacob, now 8 years old. Dear family, Richard said during the launch, this book is the story of all of us. It's about how an ordinary family learned extraordinary lessons about love, forgiveness, and growth. Emily stood up to speak. Dad, our family is living proof that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become better. Ryan added, Grandpa, thank you for teaching us that conflicts can be turned into growth. Sophie, emotional, said, Dad, thank you for teaching me that true love lets go and celebrates when people return by choice. Nathan added, Dad, our family has become an example that healthy relationships are possible when there's a willingness to learn and change. Catherine, with tears in her eyes, gave the final remark. Richard, 80 years later, I can say we've built something truly special, a family that knows how to love for real. Richard looked at all the faces around him, children, in-laws, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. 4 generations united by lessons learned through pain, but transformed into wisdom. Dear family, Richard said, if I died tomorrow, I'd die in peace, because I know I've left a legacy far greater than money or property. I've left a family that knows how to love, forgive, support, and grow together. And most of all, Richard continued, I've left a family that will never go through the pain we endured, because you've learned the lessons it took me 70 years to understand. That night, when everyone had gone home, Richard and Catherine were alone as they had been so many times over the years. Catherine, can you believe the journey we've taken? Richard, from watching Emily's wedding online to seeing our family with 4 generations united, it's a transformation that seems impossible. Catherine, if someone had told me 20 years ago that I'd be here today, with this family happy and whole, I wouldn't have believed it. Richard, what do you value most about everything we've lived through? Richard thought for a long moment. Catherine, I value most that our family has learned true love isn't perfect, but it's real. It's a love that grows through hardship, strengthens with resolved conflicts, and deepens with lessons learned. Richard, what's your greatest hope for the next generations? Catherine, my greatest hope is that Olivia, Ethan, and the great-grandchildren yet to come will grow up knowing they can be authentic, make mistakes, disagree with their parents, and still be loved unconditionally. Richard, our family, really did become something special, didn't it? Catherine, our family became real, and real families are always special because they know true love doesn't avoid problems. It turns them into opportunities to grow. That night, Richard slept with a peaceful heart, knowing he had fulfilled his mission as a father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He had learned, through much suffering, how to love truly. and he had passed those lessons on to his family, ensuring future generations would never endure the pain he had caused and suffered. The final entry in Richard's journal, written that night, read, "Today, at 80 years old, I can say I am a fulfilled man, not because my life was perfect, but because I learned to turn imperfections into wisdom. Not because I avoided conflicts, but because I learned to resolve them in healthy ways. Not because I never hurt my family, but because I learned to ask for forgiveness and truly change. My family today is stronger, more united, and more authentic than I ever dreamed possible. Not because we're perfect, but because we're real. Because we know how to love with all the complexities that true love demands. If I leave any legacy to the world, it's this: it's never too late to change. It's never too late to learn to love better. It's never too late to turn conflicts into growth. And above all, it's never too late to build relationships based on mutual respect, genuine forgiveness, and unconditional love. My family is living proof that miracles happen when we have the courage to admit our mistakes, the humility to change, and the patience to rebuild relationships on firmer foundations. I sleep in peace tonight, knowing I fulfilled my mission as a father. Not perfectly, but completely. And most of all, knowing my family will continue passing down these lessons of true love to future generations." 2 years later, Richard passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82. At the funeral, over 1,000 people were present, including hundreds of families touched by his story. Emily gave the main speech, her voice trembling but steady. "My father wasn't a perfect man. He made serious mistakes as a father when I was young. But he was brave enough to admit his faults, humble enough to change, and patient enough to rebuild our relationship on stronger ground. Daddy taught me that true love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about being willing to learn from them. It's about growing, changing, evolving. It's about turning pain into wisdom." Our family today is the greatest testament to my father's legacy. We're a family that knows how to love deeply, that knows how to resolve conflicts, that knows how to support without controlling, that knows how to forgive without forgetting. Dad, thank you for teaching me it's never too late to start over. Thank you for showing me that family love is stronger than any mistake. And thank you for giving me the most united, loving family anyone could dream of. Ryan, now 32, also spoke. "My grandfather was an accountant who became an expert in family relationships, not through formal education, but through life experience. He turned his darkest moments into the greatest lessons our family could ever receive. Grandpa, thank you for teaching me that conflicts are opportunities for growth. Thank you for showing me that real families are the ones who work through hardships. And thank you for giving me an example of how a man can change and grow until his last day." Sophie, speaking via video call from London, where she had temporarily returned for Matthew's project, said, "Dad taught me the most valuable lesson a daughter can learn, that true love lets go. He supported my decisions, even when they were hard for him. He taught me that parents who truly love want their children to be happy, not convenient. Dad, thank you for teaching me that physical distance doesn't weaken family love. Thank you for showing me that unconditional support strengthens relationships. And thank you for being the father every daughter deserves." Nathan concluded the family speeches. "My father taught me that being a man isn't about never admitting mistakes. It's about having the courage to own up when we're wrong and working to make things right. He taught me that real fathers put their children's well-being above their own pride. Dad, thank you for teaching me that healthy relationships take constant work. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to learn and grow. And thank you for showing me how to build a family based on true love." Catherine, now 86 but still sharp and strong, gave the final words. "Richard was my companion for 60 years. I saw him make mistakes, suffer, learn, and grow. I watched him transform from a stubborn, controlling man into a loving and wise father and grandfather. Richard's greatest legacy isn't the books he wrote or the talks he gave. His greatest legacy is the relationships he rebuilt and the lessons our family learned. We are a family that knows how to love truly, and that's thanks to the courage Richard had to change. Richard, thank you for 60 years of companionship. Thank you for having the courage to transform. And thank you for giving me the most united and loving family anyone could ever dream of having. After the funeral, the family gathered at Richard and Catherine's home to share memories and support one another. Olivia, now 7, asked Emily, "Grandma, did great-grandpa Richard go to heaven?" "Yes, Olivia, but he's still alive in our hearts and in the lessons he taught us." "Grandma, what lessons?" Emily knelt down to Olivia's level. "Olivia, great-grandpa Richard taught us that families who truly love each other can overcome any problem, that it's never too late to apologize when we're wrong, and that true love is the kind that lets people be who they really are." "Grandma, will our family always love like this?" "Always, Olivia, because great-grandpa Richard showed us how." That night, Emily found in Richard's office all the letters he had written to his grandchildren and great-grandchildren over the years. There was also a final letter addressed to the entire family. "My dear family, if you're reading this letter, it means my time on earth has come to an end. But I want you to know I leave in peace, because I know I'm leaving behind the greatest treasure a man can leave, a family united by true love." Our story began with conflict, pain, and separation, but it ends with unity, wisdom, and unconditional love. This transformation was only possible because we all had the courage to grow, to change, to forgive, and to start anew. To Emily, my brave daughter, thank you for having the strength to confront me when I needed to be confronted. Thank you for teaching me that being a father is about respect, not control. And thank you for giving me the chance to become the father you deserved. To Catherine, my life partner, thank you for standing by me through the hardest times. Thank you for being the strength that held our family together. And thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. To Nathan, Michael, Ryan, Sophie, and all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you are proof that our family learned the right lessons. You know how to love healthily, resolve conflicts maturely, and support without controlling. Don't mourn my passing. Celebrate what we built together. Celebrate a family that turned pain into wisdom, conflict into growth, and mistakes into learning. And most of all, keep passing these lessons down to the next generations. Teach Olivia, Ethan, and the great-grandchildren yet to come that real families are the ones who work through difficulties, that it's never too late to change, and that true love is stronger than any problem. My final request is this: whenever you face family conflicts, remember our story. Remember that any crisis can be turned into an opportunity for growth. Remember that family love is the most precious gift there is. I lived 82 years, and I can say the last 20 were the happiest of my life. Not because they were perfect, but because they were real. Because I was surrounded by a family that knew how to love truly. Keep loving one another. Keep growing together. Continue to be the example that families can overcome any difficulty when there is love, respect, and willingness to change. With all the love a heart can hold. Richard. 10 years after Richard's passing, the family had grown even larger. Ryan and Jessica had 2 more children. Sophie and Matthew also welcomed a second daughter. Nathan became a grandfather, and Olivia, now 17, was preparing to start college. On each anniversary of Richard's death, the family gathered to share stories about him and remember the lessons he had taught. During one of these gatherings, Olivia asked a question that deeply touched Emily. "Grandma Emily, do you think great-grandpa Richard would be proud of our family today?" Emily looked around the room, seeing 4 generations gathered harmoniously, and answered with tears in her eyes. "Olivia, I'm certain he would be overjoyed. Our family today is everything he dreamed was possible. United, loving, able to resolve conflicts, and willing to support one another unconditionally." "Grandma, did our story really have a happy ending?" Emily smiled, remembering the answer Richard had given years before to a similar question. "Olivia, our story doesn't have a happy ending. Our story has a happy present. Every day we choose to love each other truly. Every day we apply the lessons great-grandpa Richard taught us. Family happiness isn't a destination we reach. It's a path we choose to walk every day." Olivia nodded, clearly understanding the depth of the answer. "Grandma, I'll remember that forever. And so the Mitchell family story continued, not with an ending but with a new beginning each day. A family that had learned true love isn't perfect, but it's real. It grows through hardships, strengthens with resolved conflicts, and deepens with lessons learned. Richard was gone, but his legacy lived on in every hug, every honest conversation, every conflict resolved with love, and every decision made with the family's well-being in mind. His final lesson had become the family's first rule. True love lets go, supports unconditionally, forgives genuinely, and always leaves the door open for anyone who wants to come home. The end. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a heartfelt comment below. Do you think Richard made the right decisions along his journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts about this family that turned conflict into growth. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.